Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
I mean, sure, the Devils went on the road and got a gritty win. They're still undefeated. Yeah. But, Joe, the curse is over.
It's a day that I wasn't sure I'd ever live to see. Didn't know if America or planet Earth would ever see such a momentous, such a relieving time in life. And hopefully maybe it's a sign of the times that things are getting better. My goodness, for the first time in, almost 17 years, I saw ASU win a sporting event on the road. I didn't quite know what to do with myself, Brad. It was an emotional time, a victorious time, a prideful time. Yes, it was a gritty, it's sometimes gross, it's sometimes nerve-wracking, it's sometimes angering victory over Texas State. It unfolded essentially, realistically, as we predicted. A close game, wasn't pretty. It's one of them get-out-of-Dodge situations, but ASU went and got out of Dodge with a victory, going 3-0. The curse is dead. That streak is over. ASU remains undefeated. Life's all right. But you know what? That celebration, that's got to be short-lived, because a big one up on deck is ASU opens up Big 12 play. Its debut game in conference action coming up this Saturday afternoon in Lubbock, Texas, against Texas Tech.
So a lot to break down, not only just the big win over Texas State, but of course that Big 12 matchup against Texas Tech, back-to-back weekends in the Lone Star State for the Devils. So we're going to be joined a little bit later on by Texas Tech insider Joe Lopez and a trio of key Sun Devil defenders, Shamari Simmons, Clayton Smith, and Keyshaun Elliott.
And Sun Devil fans, if you happen to be jonesing for a new vehicle like you're jonesing for yet another Sun Devil victory, your first call, your only call, needs to be to Jones Auto Group. Jones has been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years with multiple locations across the state. And it is a fact, Jones Auto Group was the original provider of vehicles to Sun Devil student athletes for NIL purposes. And it's your support that enables them to continue to do that year after year. So in addition to their unwavering support of Sun Devil athletics, Jones Auto Group offers unique tax advantages due to their dealership locations that can save you big time money. Those things add up when you're getting a new vehicle. Doesn't get much better than that if you ask me. When shopping for a new vehicle, you're working with a fellow Sun Devil that will truly treat you like family and can potentially set you up for some big time unique savings. So here's what you got to do. Here is the game plan. Contact our guy Parker Jones, not just the owner and GM, but a third-generation Arizona State alum, and just like you, a diehard Sun Devil fan. So take down his cell number. He wants to hear from you. Text him, call him, get a hold of him. He wants to help you out. 602-881-8998. That'll get you right in contact with the owner. Again, 602-881-8998. Browse their inventory of pre-owned and new vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, Joe, let's dive into some news items. Most pressingly, the injury report. And a couple weeks ago, Kenny Dillingham mentioned that in the weeks leading up to ASU's first bye week, which will be coming up on the weekend of the 28th, some good news and some reinforcements will be on the way. And this is one week that is really good to see some defensive names pop back into the lineup. And starting off, defensive end Prince Dorbah, who, of course, entered this season as a starter opposite Clayton Smith, a guy who had 6 sacks in 6 games last year. Unfortunately, got dinged up a little bit in the offseason, but Elijah O'Neal's been filling in very well in his place. But getting another edge rusher, the caliber of Prince Dorbah, before you're facing an offense that put up 60 points a week ago, it's good timing.
Yeah, the combination of Clayton Smith and Elijah O'Neal has been solid, to say the least, for these first few games. Obviously, ASU still working to replace BJ Green from last year, but as you talked about, in that slight bit of action last year, Dorbah really showed some flashes. So you throw him into that mix, you create, a steady 3-man rotation, all of which can get to the quarterback. Very, very helpful thing, especially going up against a Texas Tech team with a pretty balanced offense and a quarterback that can sling the ball.
So moving back one level to the linebacker group. Now, of course, they've been filling in capably with a trio led by Keyshaun Elliott, but they're getting some reinforcements, and Jordan Crook back in action this week per Kenny Dillingham. And he's a guy that was really in a good spot to perhaps, open up the season as a starter next to Elliott, a guy who brings some explosiveness, some speed from that second level.
Again, and you're adding some very solid depth at that position. You've had that top three of Keyshaun Elliott, Zyrus Fiaseo, Caleb McCullough doing, the bulk of the work through these first few games. You get Crook in there, an athletic guy, a guy that can get in the backfield. Once again, the timing is perfect because ASU is going to face one of the best running backs in the nation and a quarterback that can make you pay as well. So you want to be able to attack defensively in every way that you can, and getting these bodies back in the mix is a great way to do that.
So, of course, Tate Romney's still going to be out for a little bit as his arm continues to mend, but having a group of 4 linebackers of that quality is going to be a nice boost for the Devil defense. One other guy that is going to be coming back into the lineup today, was practicing earlier on Tuesday morning, is offensive lineman Sha Naah, a welcome boost to that offensive line, of course. As we'll dig into, maybe they were a little gassed on the short week, but so far this year, the interior of the offensive line has played pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. And when you get a guy back there that is either, a starter or someone competing for starting reps. Of course, Naah played quite a bit last year as a true freshman in a starting role. You want to get as much depth back there, whether he's in a starting position or, whether he's in a rotation type of spot. But yeah, you saw week over week some differences between how the offensive line and how the run game panned out for ASU. Texas State has a really active defense, and they were just playing with nothing to lose and all the house money trying to get a huge upset win. So, you learned some things from the past couple of games, and getting healthy is the best way to go on the offensive line.
All right, so now to the questionable category. Running back to Carlos Brooks, who's out of action a week ago at Texas State. He's questionable for the Texas Tech game. A couple of defensive a few of defensive tackles are also on the 50-50 questionable category. Jacob Kangaika and Zach Swanson are deemed by Kenny Dillingham to be 50-50. Another running back, Raleek Brown, it sounds like he officially questionable. Might not see him back. He was in action against Texas State, had a couple of touches, but it sounds like Kenny Dillingham made it pretty clear that they don't want to rush him back from his leg injury, and they don't want him back at 85, 90%. They were going to be waiting until he's a full 100% and his explosive self.
Yeah, you got a few reps out there, a few touches, just good to see him in action. I know we're all curious to see how this running back room is really going to shake out. Is it going to be that just Cam Scadaboo getting the lion's share of things and then, maybe some scraps for the rest? Or are they really going to divvy it up? It's a conversation we've been having for quite a while here, and we'll see how that unfolds as the weeks go on. Obviously, it seems like we're not going to get a true scope of that this week just due to player availability. And really want to get those interior defensive linemen back. I mean, you saw a lot of examples last week for Texas State where they were just really attacking the middle and had quite a bit of success doing that. So if you can plug things up, again, going against a tremendously talented running back and just a very good overall offense, you got to have all hands on deck.
And just one player who is officially deemed out by Kenny Dillingham in his Monday presser, cornerback Terence Welch will miss another game. He's a quality corner who's had a pretty strong fall camp, but so far I've been really impressed with Javen Robinson. Keith Abney allowed the big touchdown a week ago, but was able to bounce back, get a key fourth quarter pass breakup to end a drive. Rodney Bimage has been playing instead and counts as Bradley. So, this is going to be a high-flying Texas Tech offense. Welch could be certainly used, but so far you got to be a little bit encouraged by what we've seen from the rest of the corners.
Yeah, last week against Texas State, the cornerbacks, as you mentioned, had some up and down moments. They're going against a good quarterback, some talented receivers. So there were certainly some plays that got away from ASU, but there were some really big plays as well, especially down the stretch in those final few possessions, the majority of the fourth quarter, when ASU is really just able to snatch that victory out of the jaws of defeat. So you hope that Welch can get back in action soon. He's one of the players that I was pretty vocal about being very, very excited about in the offseason, given his credentials coming over from LSU. So hopefully that can get thrown into the mix, because once you get into this Big 12 schedule, which of course ASU starts this weekend, you got just about every team that you're going to face has some offensive firepower. So you got to be equipped to go against that.
And after the big win at Texas State, ASU got some good news on the recruiting trail, adding to their already impressive haul in the trenches. A new commitment from offensive tackle Manui Muti from Hawaii, 6'7", 320 pounds. I mean, that just screams prototypical tackle frame. He is ASU's 6th offensive line commit in this 2025 class.
Yeah, just a great deal of work that's being done by the entire coaching staff, recruiting the state of Hawaii, doing so in the offensive line. A solid pickup, a very high 3-star performer, someone with some very impressive offers. So These are the foundation blocks that you want to build, that you want to have these offensive linemen. I mean, if you can somehow get away from like that, mercenary thing of a lot of grad transfers, and that's no disrespect to any of them, because the guys that are coming over are certainly helping out. But man, if you can put together guys that can stick around for a few years and get multiple years of starting experience and really gel together, that is certainly how you rebuild a program.
All right, so before we dive into a look back at ASU's win over Texas State, let's talk to one of the guys who played a key role, especially in that second half, and turning things around on the ASU defensive side, and a guy who laid probably an early contender for the hit of the year. Here's a conversation with safety Shamari Simmons. So on that big hit, when you got that guy lined up like that, what are the thoughts through your head as you're closing in on him and about to lay the boom?
I didn't have no mindset. I was just really just thinking about like just deliver a blow when I hit him, for real. 'Cause I knew something was off when they put a receiver down at the tight end position and had the tight end on me. So I really felt like it was like a flare screen coming my way. So it's just all about me just setting up my block and just laying the boom.
How does it feel to just lay somebody out like that? Good clean hit that just kind of depleted him.
I mean, it felt good, but like that next play, I had to lock back in because it's the next play. I don't want to get too carried away with the big hit.
So you guys all showed some great resilience in bouncing back and rallying from that deficit. After the game, Xavier said that you guys really, it was kind of not a change in scheme, but a change in yourselves and just kind of locking in with the team leaders. As one of those team leaders, what was that process like? Just kind of set the tone and have the other guys lead and have the results.
Yeah, me and Zay felt it like in the first half. Like, we just talking to each other on the sideline like, hey, we ain't playing our brand of football in the first half. Then B Ward came out the box, came in the halftime and really not to discipline us, but like let us know, hey, we not playing how we supposed to be playing. So it's us two as the leader back there. We just be like, hey, we got to really lead and really show people like who we are. So I just felt like that second half we really led the way in a good example.
Kenny mentioned that the ability to counterpunch when you guys held off the Mississippi State rally 2 weeks ago, and then obviously the resilience last week. How much of the what happened in week 2 and overcoming that adversity helped you guys against Texas State?
It definitely helped us. I mean, I just felt like these 3 games is exactly what we needed because we won every which way of the ball. We dominated the first game. Second game, they almost came back on us, and then third game we was trailing. So I just felt like we done had 3 phases of wins that we definitely wanted to see before a loss. So we can be able to be like, hey, like we can't play at this level at like game 3 because I felt like the first half we didn't play our brand of football on defense. So like we just have to keep playing like the second half of Texas State.
So now that you guys are getting some guys back, Prince is coming back, Jordan's coming back, the success you guys already had in defense, what does it mean to get those reinforcements on top of how you guys are already playing?
Oh, them boys are key factors to our defense because they bring so much energy and they just bring so much energy on the defense side of the ball. So we definitely miss them. It's gonna be fun to have them boys back, definitely.
Going on the road again to Texas once again, and then playing Texas Tech. What are some of the things that jump out about that offense that was able to put up over 60 a week ago?
They have good talent at their receivers and tight ends, but once again, like long as we do, I'm not worried about really nobody.
Are you excited at all to face off against Jalen Conyers a little bit?
Oh yes, sir. I'm definitely shout out to him, but I'm not really too big on. I'm just worried about getting the win. I'm not really worried about matchups.
What are going to be some of the keys to victory and some of the challenges you guys will need to overcome to make sure that you guys exit Lubbock 4-0?
Just being able to just get lined up very fast and just because once we get lined up and just play fast, it's really hard to beat us. So as long as we just get lined up, be able to communicate and just be on the same page with every play, we'll be good.
Now, Brad, last week's win didn't always look good. The end result was good. But if you always want to be looking good, get on to shopping at Cactus Sports. While many ASU stores have come and gone, Cactus Sports is a community staple. Founded, owned, and operated by ASU alumni since 1992, every purchase made through Cactus Sports results in royalties that help support Arizona State University. Many of Cactus Sports' competitors have been bought out and operated by out-of-state corporations, while Cactus Sports stays locally owned and operated. They can consider it a privilege to be able to work together with their guests, alumni, fans, and students who help give input for some of the purchases Cactus Sports buys. When you purchase from Cactus Sports, not only are you assured of the highest quality, officially licensed merchandise, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing that you truly helped support local small businesses. Cactus Sports is located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe, open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and Sundays from 10 to 6. You can also view their full inventory and shop online at cactussports.com, where they offer free domestic ground shipping for orders of $75 or more. They also feature such items as the Iron Devils line. I've been rocking that one a lot. And then the Activate the Valley line that includes a donation from every purchase to ASU's Sun Angel NIL Collective. And also they're a retail partner of another sponsor of ours, of course, HomeField Apparel. Locally owned and ASU alumni operated since 1992. Shop at Cactus Sports and think local, buy local, be local.
ASU 31, Texas State 28. A game that was so gritty, ASU had to win it twice, Joe. I mean, you were there in the stadium, so you got to see things unfold. And unfortunately, it seemed like everybody on the watching on TV didn't get to see the slow start by the clock operator, because I was down there right about the line of scrimmage on that final play when, with 2 seconds left, Sam Levitt took the snap. The clock didn't run. And I actually went back and timed it 3 different times, got an average about 1.9 seconds from the snap to when the clock started rolling. So a little bit of home cooking there. Nevertheless, the Sun Devils prevailed, rallying from a 21-7 early deficit. And I think, Joe, this was a flat out a win of culture. That this is a game that, like, every ASU team from, I don't know, like from 2015 on, they lose that game. Maybe 2024 is the start of something new.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack there, especially after the way the things has almost slipped away in the second half of the previous week's game against Mississippi State. You know, you feared that going on the road, playing against a team that's got a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, you know, when they got things rolling in their direction and put up those 21 straight points, you really had some concerns. Skipping ahead to that end of the game, what a wild scene that was. I mean, I couldn't tell you how much time it was in real time that transpired between what we thought was the end of the game and them deciding to, you know, essentially run another play in the stadium. It felt like a lifetime, especially for a dude like me who, you know, was under the impression that he'd just seen ASU win on the road for the first time in almost 17 years. That satisfaction had to be briefly delayed. And I got to tell you, I'm not trying to make this about me, but every wild thought of a crazy 1 second football play that could happen was going through my head in that last down. Like, this is going to, you know, I had quite a bit of fear that the curse would continue in the most cursed way possible with, you know, a 1 second play. But
can you imagine if that happened, though? Like, you would be banned from, like, every ASU event.
I would have to be excommunicated completely. My goodness. Because you know, in that first half, I got some texts. I got some, you know, mentions on social media. Didn't get a good signal in the stadium there. So, you know, I kind of let it all play out without responding, but I'm kind of glad that, you know, someone's looking out for me with some, you know, technology interference there. But what a wild end to the game. And obviously, you know, it resulted in nothing. We don't need to meticulously break down that final play. They're kind of between a rock and a hard place, maybe a little bit too far away for, you know, a true Hail Mary pass, but you know, obviously not within field goal range or anything like that yet. So there, you know, wasn't too much that they could do with that. But man, just a gritty game, a gritty win, as you mentioned, one that culturally can make a very big difference. You know, it did not look pretty, but the job got done. And getting down 14 to, you know, that sort of rowdy atmosphere, not everybody can come back from that. ASU did that, obviously chipping away, going into the locker room to tie the ball game, and then just keeping up with things and forcing the turnovers when they had a dire need for turnovers, whether that's, you know, taking the ball away or turnover on downs. You know, there were plays that went their way. There were calls that decisions that went ASU's way. So at the end of the day, it was chaotic. It was a heart-pounding type of game, but those are the ones that might, prove to be highly beneficial over the course of the season and can be worth more than just the one win in the the scorebooks. But even that alone is a very big thing for ASU at this point.
One added benefit of that crazy final play where they tried the lateral tomfoolery is, of course, Clayton Smith falls on that ball, so that extra second got them a little extra help in the turnover margin column. So, another turnover force.
And I was having conversations with people that I was hanging out with out there in San Marcos the next day because I was, looking through the box scores. I don't really have a chance to keep up with that during the game. And, I was trying to figure that out. I'm like, where in the world did they get 3 turns? Like, I could not figure it out. I'm like, obviously, the interception. Remember that, fumble recovery. That one reminded me a lot of Tyler Johnson against U of A in 2018. And then I couldn't remember the third. And I was like in a conversation over coffee at breakfast. Like, people are talking about what they're going to do for the weekend, not even talking sports. I'm like, it was a fumble on that last play. Just one of these like moments where your brain just gets this, this catharsis because you actually figure it out. So, yeah, that helped. But, yeah, it did a little stat padding. ASU helps its turnover. That was a bad area last year. So, you know what? I'll take it.
No, I absolutely should have written this down, but I think that was the 7th of the year for ASU, and I think that might equal last year's total, or if not, pretty close. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, between the touchdown passes and the turnovers, there were very few of both of those last year, and they're improving in both regard this year.
So this was a game, kind of going back to the culture win, and Kenny told us after the game that this is like when the game was on the line, when the game mattered most, the best players made the plays. And that's something that we haven't really seen too much, I think, over the last several seasons of Sun Devil football, going back to the previous regime. And he said, Cam Scadaboo got kind of bottled up most of the game, but when they needed the yards most, he got loose. He got that 9 yards on that late drive to kind of seal the game. Alford made the big-time pick, and the best players made those big-time moment plays. And for me, it really jumped out because, after they got off to that sluggish start, of course, we talked about a lot, the short week and playing an SEC team, then having to go on the road and play this game 5 days later, it really just seemed like this was a team that was maybe, playing with a quarter tank of gas or something, and that it was just kind of, when they were down 21-7, ultimately they're just going to run out of gas, and this is going to be same old Devils. But somehow, some way, they kept finding a little bit more, like the Kramer, like that Seinfeld episode with Kramer, just taking that car out for a test drive, just on E. Somehow, some way, the Sun Devils made it happen.
Yeah, and yet again, ASU with a good immediate start. If I'm not mistaken, so has ASU scored a touchdown first and not allowed its opponent to score in each of the first 3 games? I think that's how each of the first 3 have opened, if I'm not mistaken.
A score for sure. It was a field goal or touchdown against Mississippi State. But it was definitely like a stop and then points.
Right, exactly. So you saw that happen again in San Marcos, but then things went south from there. So, like I said, it was an environment that was, they were fired up. It's a small facility. So, truthfully, and this is, no slight against the Sun Belt team that's only been an FBS team for a little over a decade. Not a huge facility. Even at its loudest, it didn't strike me as being a hugely loud environment. I don't know if that, rattled ASU, except for when ASU had the ball very, very deep in its own territory near, some end zone sections. So that was a thing as well. But it just seemed like it was going to be the perfect storm. Like, we've seen this, we've seen this movie. We heard this song plenty of times before of just ASU being in the wrong place in the wrong time and letting another team catch fire in a game that, realistically they have no business losing. Although I believe ASU technically was, a betting underdog after some of the information was, leaked or released about some of the injuries that ASU would have for the ball game. So again, a lot of it just came together, at least ahead of time, with the fear and concern that this was just going to be that same storyline that we've seen far too many times, whether it's, losing to a non-conference team that you should beat, like a Eastern Michigan or even a Fresno State, or just all these, road games against bad Oregon State or Washington State teams, or however you want to, fill in the Mad Libs of football teams there. But you see ASU buck a bit of a trend. And as I put on Twitter, I think this game in a nutshell, it's hard for me to think of like a punch and counter punch game that ASU won in that way. We've seen some that are like ASU gets off to a big lead and lets it dissolve and then still wins, or maybe makes like a furious comeback again, like that Arizona game in 2018. But one that was just kind of back and forth. Yeah, you got down 14, but then it was just punch, counterpunch, punch, counterpunch. And ASU was the team with its hand raised in the air, while Texas State was the one laying on the mat. Again, I think that is a victory that you can extract a lot more than just that one win from.
Yeah, I think the ramifications of this win are going to be felt, rest of this season for sure. But I think for the foundation of this program under Kenny Dillingham going forward and kind of breaking things down, starting on the offensive side, the run game was really held in check. Credit to the Texas State Bobcat defense. Their front really made life hell. ASU's offensive line, again, perhaps maybe the short week, the fatigue, or just the lack of prep for kind of the exotic looks that that Texas State was giving them. The run game just wasn't there. Cam had 24 carries, 64 yards, had a short touchdown. That was really it. So a lot of this game fell on quarterback Sam Levitt, and I thought this was a game where he grew up. He did miss some throws and kind of on the one interception, the first of the year, off target over the middle on a seam pass. It was deflected and picked, but he continued to show great poise and made the throws when it counted. Overall, 19 of 30, 246, one touchdown, one interception, a 40-yard run as well, and a touchdown scamper as well. Stats that aren't going to blow you away, that aren't going to be looked back upon as any kind of career highs when it's all said and done, but just the way he handled a hostile atmosphere, rallying his team from 2 scores down on the road. Again, the redshirt freshman I thought took a few steps forward today.
Yeah, and he was checking some boxes in terms of big plays because that was something that we wanted to see. A lot of folks are talking about, all right, you just got to connect on one of those deep balls, and then that can open some things up. And you had a great play out to Jordan Tyson. Obviously, some fancy footwork there after the catch to get in the end zone, that long run. That was a huge, huge momentum play as well for ASU, as was the touchdown run that he had. I mean, that was massive. Even the interception itself, with a young quarterback who's, only still in his first few games as a starter, you want to see how they respond to adversity. Even though he didn't throw the ball very well against Mississippi State, that adversity factor wasn't quite as much there. You get that turnover, in an important time, a ball that wasn't very well thrown, but you bounce back from that. You don't let that get in your head. You don't let that rattle you too much. I know a lot of folks have wondered, okay, what's it going to be like when ASU is in a position where it has to rally around this quarterback? How is Sam Levitt going to be able to command respect in the huddle and get the players to execute on an even keel? And despite that interception, things were functioning just fine there, as far as just not having catastrophic plays. The same can't be said for Texas State as things whittled down to the narrow points of the game. You had those 3 turnovers all coming in relatively short order from first to third. So at the end of the day, even though the stats, again, might not jump completely off the page for you, he did what was necessary, not just the game manager stuff, not just the not lose the game stuff, but also the playmaker and go out and win the game stuff. Again, I think that can be very important for the confidence of Sam Levitt, this offense, and this team as a whole.
Yeah, the connection with Jordan Tyson, that 52-yard touchdown, that's what we had seen in spring and fall camp, when those two were really developing that rapport and that chemistry. Jordan Tyson, the breakout game, 6 catches, 120, and that touchdown. Other wide receivers really not a major factor in the game. Collectively, continued their nice run of downfield blocking. Tight end Shamari Simmons had 5 catches for 57 yards. It was nice to see that rapport going along the seams. That was something that Marcus Arroyo earlier in the week had identified as a weakness in that defense, is attacking that seam. And the one interception that Levitt did throw was a seam pass to Marquise Douglas, a little bit too high for the big tight end there. But overall, yeah, it's those intangibles that quarterbacks either have or they don't have. And they're still young in his career, but what we saw on Thursday night was really promising. Hopefully, a lot of Sun Devil fans kind of took note of it and can see past maybe the stat line or maybe the throws that he did misfire on. But I think this is a real promising sign for future development.
Yeah, really encouraged by the tight ends. Shamari Simmons, a solid outing, showed some good hands and some good feet, and some catches that were not the easiest, or some There was one that he had where he, at the end of it, he kind of spun around a little bit and was kind of almost backpedaling a bit. The defender came, hit him from behind. When I saw that in the stands, I'm like, oh man, like that's, like certain plays like look like a forced fumble waiting to happen. That was kind of one of those, but that certainly did not end up being the case. Mateer held on. Cameron Harpole had a great reception. Could have been 6, should have been 6. It was nobody anywhere in the state of Texas near him, but ended up being a scoring drive nonetheless. So, encouraged by that aspect of things. Just kind of getting to the point of taking what the defense gets you. I mean, it's a really interesting thing as far as, okay, you go from running the ball, like crazy, switching that to a pretty encouraging pass game. And, you want to see, it's good to see this team be able to, go to one aspect of its offense if the other isn't really working. You're not a one-dimensional team that, hey, if one side of things gets shut down, that you're, completely inept offensively. So the ability to adapt, they've shown some of that throughout the course of this early 2024 season.
All right, switching over to the defense, and I really thought this is kind of the embodiment of it's not how you start, it's how you finish, because you look at the fourth quarter for the Texas State offense, 27 total yards, 3 turnovers, and a turnover on downs. That's a way to rally. And one of the most interesting things that I think came out of this game is Xavier Alford after the game asked, what was said, what was done, what changes were made, maybe to schemed in response to what Texas State was doing. And he said, no, we made changes in ourselves. We looked ourselves in the mirror. I challenged myself. I told the defensive leaders, we're going to put it on us, and you all just follow. And in that second half, that's exactly what happened. We saw big-time plays by Alford, big-time plays by Shamari Simmons. Keith Abney came up with that big pass breakup to force the turnover on downs after earlier getting beat for the lone score in the second half. Guys like Clayton Smith stepped up, made big-time plays, and it was really encouraging. He talked about the punch-counterpunch that the defense, after kind of getting shellacked and falling into that early hole, was able to rally, and I think that's a real clear testament to the leadership of this team and a clear sign that this is perhaps not your same old Sun Devils.
Yeah, I was really eager to see how that was going to unfold. Just looking at the numbers heading into the game, Texas State had scored for the season in the first 2 games, they scored a little over 80 points, but a little over 50 of them were in the first half versus a little over 30 in the second. So, that can happen. And the thing is that they had, some games that were not tremendous blowouts. So it's not like they had 2 blowouts and they were just, sitting everybody in the second half to have that be the case. And that showed last week as far as them getting off to a hot start, but then, being able to figure things out as you go through. I mean, that fourth quarter, ASU just really buckled down and got those timely turnovers. Justin Watley, once again, guy on the spot. Shamari Simmons, huge playmaker. You got to give a ton of love to those former New Mexico State guys. I mean, Ghost Rouser really being a productive safety. And not that that's a big surprise, but he's just one that has really benefited from some of the personnel changes over the offseason. If you don't get a Mason Williams leaving the team, then who knows if he's fitting in the starting lineup, perhaps, maybe not. Keyshaun Elliott, yet again, a dozen tackles on the day. And man, that addition is proving huger and huger with every passing week. So, you had guys, and obviously Clayton Smith, Blazin' Lona Wong even getting into action with some of the, absences at defensive line. He made a couple plays, got a sack. So, again, you got guys that stepped up when they need to. You also have those reliable presences like Keyshaun Elliott and Shamari Simmons. Xavier Alford forcing a turnover as well. So, again, it wasn't a perfect day by the defense by any means. They were often getting gashed on just those really, short passes just to move the sticks and move the sticks. Then Texas State would take it deep. They were going to get theirs, but ASU clenched down when they needed to and obviously made some massive plays to seal the win.
Yeah, we'll see how much of the short week and the kind of just the depth issues caused by injuries. Of course, in this game, Kagaika Swanson, Crook, Welch, Dorba, Romney all missed those games. We talked about at the top that some of those guys are coming back, and so we'll see. Perhaps if a proper week's preparation, some added rest, and some reinforcements are going to help get ASU to their more dominant defensive form of the first couple of weeks. But the way they were able to take the punch and then punch back, and not just maybe get stops, but also get big time turnovers in those moments, and it was really impressive. And you talked about it, Joe. The safeties for me, unbelievable game. Rouser, another double-digit tackle game. Alford just continuing to be the heart and soul of the defense. Shamari Simmons was really spectacular down there. And then even just some of the corners. Javen Robinson had a nice downfield PBU to bat a ball away. And Way Abney, a young corner, was able to kind of put Bean Burned behind him and able to make a huge play in crunch time. Really impressive overall.
Yeah, and you got to give a shout out to the special teams when you have a close game like this on the road. You absolutely got to. Canyon Floyd, outstanding game, averaged over 43 yards on his 5 punts, 2 of which were downed inside the 20, a 56-yarder. That was a very critical play for ASU to have at the time that it came through. Ian Hershey, 1 out of 2. He missed from 51. I know that some folks were kind of questioning whether that was the right call to kick the field goal in that instance. Good that the staff has faith in him. He was hitting from 40-plus the week before. Obviously, the one that he made was just a chip shot, 22-yarder, but that ended up being the difference in the game. So, and then Parker Lewis still doing his thing with touchbacks on the kickoffs. If you really dug into the stats, Texas State has some very good return men. So they got 28 yards on 2 kickoff returns, and that just came on 1 of them, actually. So limited day there. So as far as special teams go, again, not perfect with the missed field goal, but really, really encouraged after what we saw last year, and just so many guys having to jump into things at punter. Canyon Floyd looking like a really key pickup here in the the early stages of his football career.
And Shamari Simmons bailed out the bad illegal formation penalty that negated the pin of Canyon Floyd punt at the 1 yard line. But Floyd really showing that he's an impressive weapon, able to flip the field. And that again, that's something we talked about ad nauseum last season. Just ASU's inability, whether it was Scadaboo or having to be the punter, Josh Carlson punting with a broken foot, but Canyon Floyd being able to step up and on the road in these close games, in these hostile atmospheres, special teams is going to make a difference. And ASU made just enough plays and was able to kind of rally just enough to really kind of step up and to help secure the victory. And recent years that they've been contributing to losses, and so far this year they've been helping to get those W's right now.
Yeah, there are some scenarios where maybe in the past things, and not just this past game, all 3 games, where things could have gone way worse for ASU teams. We have seen that. We've seen teams let things slip away or not be able to hold on to leads or not dominate like happened in the first game. So there's little bits and pieces of reasons for some unique optimism. Now, on the other hand, there's not necessarily reason for concern, but just reason to continue playing the games. Those first 2 wins are looking less pretty by the week because Wyoming and Mississippi State not doing too much. Maybe ASU just crushed them early on. I don't know. Texas State, I think, is going to have a very good season. They may not lose too many more or any more games over the course of the season. So that could be, a quality win for ASU as things progress. But again, week after week, because you got Texas Tech up ahead, and then you don't want to look too far ahead of that. But just the Big 12 is really shaping up for the most part, kind of like we thought it would be. Just a lot of competition. There are some teams that are standing out among the group, but a lot of football left to play. And, ASU's in it. You're undefeated. You're still in it. So it's kind of a beneficial mixture of you get those 3 wins, you make the plays to get there, but you got enough to work on week over week so that you don't get arrogant or cocky, think you can just walk over teams. There's enough to continue to work on so that you continue to hone your craft each week.
All right, so before we talk to a couple of those key Sun Devil defenders we talked about, and Clayton Smith and Keyshaun Elliott, if you guys haven't checked out HomeField apparel lately, they are dropping some serious heat. They just dropped a new line of corduroy hats this past weekend, and ASU is among that, adding to the 32-piece collection. They also dropped a coach's jacket. Of course, this is our first day in about the 113 days, Joe. The Phoenix did not hit 100 degrees, so cooler weather is allegedly coming down the pike. So you got to gear up in HomeField apparel. And as you mentioned earlier, you can find a lot of good HomeField apparel stuff with our friends at Cactus Sports. Also at HomeFieldApparel.com, you can find 32 pieces of their ASU collection, along with nearly about 200 other schools. Of course, the holidays are fast approaching. So head on to HomeFieldApparel.com. Check out the ASU selection there and support the good folks at The Good Brand. All right, so now let's talk to a couple of those key Sun Devil defenders now, starting off with defensive end, Clayton Smith.
All right, so what did it mean just go back to your home state and get a win like you guys did?
It means a lot. It means a lot. Definitely proud of how the way we performed, responded. We didn't come out playing our best game, but we came out after half and responded to adversity the way we've been planning to do all year. So I'm proud of this team. I'm glad we got the maturity to do that, because last year that's ability we didn't have. Last year, if that would have happened, we would have fell apart. So I'm just glad that we're able to reel it back in and go out there and play our best ball.
Where did the turnaround happen in that regard, the ability to handle adversity?
To be honest with you, it never felt like we were down in the game. Our leaders did a really good job of keeping everybody in tune and motivated. It never once felt like we were down in the game, and I think we made the plays we needed to play and got back in the game and won it.
Savion mentioned that it was kind of like the team leader led, or just like you guys didn't make changes in scheme, but he said you made changes in us.
Yeah.
As one of the team leaders, one of the council members, what was that like from a leadership perspective?
I mean, obviously it's not the ideal thing, you know what I'm saying, to go down like we did. But I feel like we got to keep a level head, because if we gonna start going crazy, the rest of the team's gonna go crazy. So I feel like we keep a level head and we're spitting out the right message and we're keeping our guys in tune with the game, then they're just gonna reflect what we do.
How does it feel to think about the fact that you're about to play in the first ever Big 12 conference game in Arizona State history this week?
Honestly, it's definitely something fun to think about. We made history once this year, so I definitely want to continue to do that.
Look, and Clayton, when you guys talk about obviously being physical and setting a tone, but when Shamari makes plays like that at the beginning of the game, just a big hit and then causing the fumble, obviously I know it pumps you guys up, but in the confidence the guys doing their jobs, what does that do for the team when he makes plays like that?
Honestly, we play so stress-free knowing at our back end, because we got Shamari, we got Goes, we got X, we got Keith, we got a lot of guys back there that make a lot of plays. So it's really relieving knowing that those guys are going to hold up. And if we execute our rush plan, get off the ball correctly, then we're going to get home, because we'll have time.
What are the biggest challenges Texas Tech's offense is going to pose Saturday?
Our biggest thing, we just can't get caught. They're going to try to trick us. Our biggest thing is if we line up and play our brand of ball, I feel like we can win. They're not as physical as us up front. I feel like we come out and play the way we played the first 2 weeks. I feel like it doesn't have to be close.
Where is Elijah taking those jumps from last year to this year?
Elijah it's like night and day. Honestly, from last year, not even knowing the plays for real, to this year, he honestly one of our best ends. Elijah, he make me uncomfortable, keep me on my toes. I know I can't relax. You know what I'm saying? With him on the other side and Prince coming back, you know what I'm saying? Keeps everybody motivated, keeps the room trying to get better. But Elijah, it's amazing what he's done from last year to this year. He's a completely different player.
What does that do for the defense, where even the leaders, the guys who are probably written in every single day, feel like they're being pushed by the other guys?
It just continues to make everybody better. I feel like if you had leaders that were lax, you know what I'm saying, that we didn't have no real competition, it'd be cool. But nobody's spot being in jeopardy, so we come out here and half-ass it naturally. That's human nature. But I feel like when you know that your spot is not safe any week, you know what I'm saying, it makes you come out here and get that extra work, and it keeps everybody improving.
What's the thought about getting Prince back this week?
I can't wait, man. It's been a long 4 weeks without my brother. You know what I'm saying? I can't wait till he get out here. He can share some of these sacks we've been getting.
All right, so when you guys are looking back at the Texas State game, kind of a slower start by the defense before you guys picked up early in the second half. When you guys kind of look back, what were some of the kind of factors maybe that led to kind of that slow start?
Yeah, I think Texas State came out, they were ready to play, but on the defensive side of the ball, we really were beating ourselves, That first half, it was however many MAs that we had, missed tackles, missed cup, the little details, really was beating us. In that second half, we really came out as a defense collectively. We played together, tackled well, ran to the ball, effort was higher. That's when you saw, the defense that we really are come out.
Xavier, after the game, mentioned that it wasn't like a change in scheme, but a change in ourselves in terms of just, kind of the defensive leaders kind of rallying and kind of the rest of the guys kind of following your example. From as one of the team leaders, what was that like, just, getting that message across and obviously seeing the results?
I think we did a good job, especially on the defensive side, keeping our composure, staying calm, down 2 scores. Still a lot of things left. A lot of things could have happened in that game, but I thought defensively we did a great job, and that's part of our jobs as the leaders, keep the defense together.
Well, was the short week a factor at all? Maybe just from a physical perspective, or just like kind of, obviously just simply not enough as much time as usual to prepare?
Yeah, I think preparing, but, the coaches did a good job, as much time as we had to get our bodies back, give us all the details that we need to know. Obviously it would have been a much cleaner game if we would have had a full week, but it is what it is, came out with a win, so that's all that matters.
Getting a big win in a state like Texas, where obviously this program has put so much emphasis, and heading back there again this Saturday, what do you think it means if you guys are able to get the Texas sweep?
I think it's huge. It's good for the recruiting, but also the people that live there, coming here. I'm sure they have friends that play with those teams, so they get bragging rights.
Getting Jordan Crook back this week, it looks like. What is he going to be adding to that linebacker mix?
He's a big juice guy. He does the job. He plays hard. That's going to be great for the linebackers. we've really only been playing with 3, so to add another one, that's less reps on all of us.
Now that you have a few games, with that green dot and kind of the communication system on your belt, is it getting a little easier, or is it still kind of more of still an adjustment in progress?
Yeah, definitely. I've adapted to it well. I'm pretty comfortable with it. I think it's a very key piece to our defense. Helps us out a lot. Gets us all ready to go.
How much did the adversity against Mississippi State and just having to fend off their rally, maybe kind of learn those lessons, as Kenny called it, being able to counterpunch? How much did that impact kind of what you guys were able to do against Texas State?
Yeah, I think both. We came out hot versus Mississippi State, and then that second half kind of got comfortable. That's when you've seen the missed tackles, missed cups, and missed assignments. That's kind of how we started the game versus Texas State. I look back watching the defensive film. There's not any plays or schemes that like, man, that really beats this call. That we were in a bad call. It's really just guys not doing their job. And it falls back on me. I got to get the defensive line whether we're playing a tempo team or not.
And you're playing a Texas Tech team that just put up 66 a week ago. And what are some of the things that kind of jump out about what they like to do?
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff. A lot of motions, a lot of things on offense. But on the defensive side, we got to do a good job. Communicating and doing our job.
You're playing in a hostile atmosphere. What kind of things are you expecting out there in Lubbock in terms of the crowd, the atmosphere, and things working against you?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be hostile. I think it'll fire the guys up. We'll be ready to play,
Any special significance, Keyshaun, about playing the first ever Big 12 game in Arizona State history?
Yeah, I would say bring up the intensity a little bit. We're part of history, ASU's first ever Big 12 game.
What are the main challenges their offense will pose for you guys on Saturday?
They'll move around, motions, they run a lot of stuff offensively, but it's nothing that we haven't seen. We got to play a full game, full fourth quarter game.
Yeah, and that's what you've done these last couple of games, winning in different ways. Can you talk about the resilience you guys showed at Texas State last week?
Yeah, I think we found a way to get out of there with a win, even if it wasn't pretty. Defensive, we went over our, keys to victory in the first half. We didn't accomplish any of those. But, if you look at the second half, we accomplished most of them. And that was the change of the game, defense finally coming together, backing up the offense. The offense played much better in the second half. We came together as a team.
And in particular, the fourth quarter, what were the keys of the defense in the fourth quarter? You really locked them down.
Yeah, we kept our composure, like I said. I thought we played as a defense, and, offense did their job, especially, that clock management. That was huge. Keep us off the field in a situation like that. Offense that, can really spread you out and spread the ball around.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to have a guy like Shamari on the back end making plays all over the field like he's doing?
Huge. It's nice to have Shamari. You've seen the plays that he's making, but it all comes from the work that he's doing out here in practice. He's a guy that's outworking most people. He's doing his job most of the time. And I was talking to him after practice, and we were telling each other how much we appreciate each other. Mm-hmm. But that just goes to show the work that he's put in. And he's a veteran. I trust him, and I know he trusts me.
Where does this team get the resilience, do you think, to do the thing? Like you were able to hold on 2 weeks ago against Mississippi State when they were coming back, and last week you rallied as a team.
Yeah, I think what we did in the offseason, the coaches and strength staff, put us in situations that were uncomfortable, kind of build for moments like that, and you really see it come to play here in the season.
I've heard several guys say practices are so tough, the games are almost fun. Is that really the way it is?
Yeah, definitely. Practice, we're going. It's our player load, our catapults are always higher than what we do in a game. It's, coaches do it on purpose to make sure the game days are easier. Mm-hmm. And, last week, that wasn't the case, and you can say whatever it is, but we didn't have our bodies, and as a player, I can say that's when, tackles were missed, players stopped doing their job. But the coaches, making this practice harder, putting us in situations that are uncomfortable before the game, it creates a cleaner game.
Now, before we take a deep dive behind enemy lines, this one goes out to the homies. If you're looking for some fire food from a restaurant owned and operated by diehard Sun Devils, make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. BE is a family-owned business that began in 1995 with a combination of authentic recipes, competitive prices, and a comfortable atmosphere. That all makes dining with Burrito Express a unique experience. You've seen their passion on Twitter. You've seen how incredibly active they are with supporting Sun Devil student athletes with a variety of NIL deals. It is safe to say if you're part of the Sun Devil family and if you're listening to us, you dang sure are, well then Burrito Express is a business well worth your support. And by the way, the food is top tier. all the way. Burrito Express has 7 Valley locations, 2 in Gilbert, 1 in Mesa, 1 in Chandler, 1 in Scottsdale, a Tempe location near Kyrene and Elliott, and the ASU location near Rural and University, just about a half mile from Mountain America Stadium. They're open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, while some locations are open as early as 6 a.m. during the week, and from 8 to 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. So we got an early game coming up this week. You're going to be watching it on TV. Grab some Burrito Express before you get things set up for the ball game. You can order online at theburritoexpress.com for pickup or delivery. Be sure to give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BurritoEXP and on TikTok at Burrito Express AZ. So we've got another installment of the segment we typically call Know Your Enemy. And yet again, Brad, I got to put like the little footnote on, we don't really treat this guest like an enemy. One cool thing of the many cool things about entering into the Big 12 conference, we get a chance to meet, catch up with, learn about our counterparts across the conference. And we're going to bring one in that I've had the chance to befriend over the last few months. He was gracious to have me on his show in the preseason. So, of course, we want to do the right thing, return the favor, and bring on the Red Raider expert himself. I'm told he's the baddest man in the panhandle. He's from the Tortillas and Takes podcast, which is part of the 10-12 network. My man, Joe Lopez, to talk about the Red Raiders. Welcome aboard, my brother.
Thank you for having me on. And yeah, this isn't, know your enemy. I don't foresee you guys being an enemy whatsoever. Me and you had the chance of talking earlier on, probably about a month and a half ago, and have kept in contact. And, it's just been a pleasure, covering all the new teams of the Big 12 with the exception to one, but we won't talk about CU anywhere. But you know how that goes. So it's been a fun ride. I mean, I can't speak the same fun ride has been for the first 3 games of the Texas Tech, season, but it's been a ride. And like I said, I'm happy to be guest whatever 1,513 number it is. There's somewhere I don't remember what number you guys ended off last, but I'm glad that I could put my name on that particular number for sure.
Absolutely, my man. So let's jump into it. So after 15 wins across his first 2 years as head coach, which obviously includes a 2-1 start this year to get him up to 17-12 record, Joey Maguire that he has as Red Raider head coach. He, of course, joined the program prior to the 2022 season. So overall, in these first 2 seasons plus a few games, what's the overall view of the job that Maguire's done there at Texas Tech?
Overall, I mean, if you're looking at it from, I guess, the big broad picture that is Joey Maguire and everything and all the momentum that he has brought into this university, getting the fan base, unified, getting all this money brought in from donors, to create the South End Zone, which some of you guys will see on Saturday. And then ultimately putting to rest that you can't recruit to Lubbock, Texas. That was always the mantra. You could never get top tier talent to Lubbock, Texas. You're never going to get anybody to Lubbock, Texas. And he's changed that narrative, bringing in such guys like Micah Hudson, the first and only ever, or up to this point, the only 5-star that this university has ever seen, and as in a wide receiver. And we've had multiple 4-stars commit since he's been here. His coaching staff that he's brought from, a majority of them came from Baylor, and some of them came from other programs, but a lot of these have these deep Texas high school roots. And, it's seen on the recruiting trail, most notably that, this is year 3. So a majority of these guys that he recruited year 1, year 2 are finally to get some burn on the football field. And, obviously the first year he caught fire. That was we won a lot of close games. Year 2, we lose all those really close games. And now year 3, this is, the prove me year. And obviously it hasn't started off the way that Texas Tech and Joey Maguire didn't want this year to start off. But I mean, I think you're going in 2-1 going into the Big 12 conference play. You could live with that. You can't live with the way you're playing, but you could live with the way that the record stands going into the Big 12 conference. So I think as a whole, Texas Tech fans everywhere want to see a little bit more progress on the win side, especially on the road, because that just has been something that he hasn't been able to do, only winning, I believe, 3 games up until this point on the road since he's been here. And that's going to be a big point of emphasis if you want to win the Big 12. So some stuff he obviously needs to clean up, but but big picture wise, this seemed like the right hire after Coach Wells was let go.
So in the preseason Big 12 media poll, Texas Tech was voted 9th. Of course, ASU was picked last in that particular poll in the preseason. From folks like yourself who are closely connected to the program, what were the preseason expectations like for what 2024 could be for Texas Tech?
Well, the expectations were pretty high. I mean, a lot of us didn't drink the same Kool-Aid that we were sold the year before, because a lot of the coaching staff and Maguire had said that this team, this last year's football team would have beat the 8-5 team by 10 points, straight up heads to heads. And so that carried a lot of weight going through. Then we have the quarterback shuffle, as you guys have dealt with yourselves. And with Tyler Shutt going down, Baron Morton also playing with a bum shoulder, and then now you're relying on a redshirt freshman to carry this team. So as far as where we're sitting at itself, at the recruiting, or I'm sorry, at Big 12 Media Days itself, it was very, very kind of even kill for the fan base where we were at, because we didn't want to get sucked into that trap again. So we did have the talent. We did have the players coming back. We did have, a solidified number one quarterback in Baron Morton. He wasn't behind or in the shadows of Tyler Shuck anymore. He was our guy. We had arguably one of the best running backs in the country coming back to our backfield room with some, nice recruits behind him. And the addition of Micah Hudson, the first 5-star to Lubbock, Texas, all these things and all these pieces, a new ramped up offensive line, a lot of things to be positive about. But, it just, injuries happen, as you guys know. And, just some things happened as far as the youth goes in some of these skill positions, especially on the defensive side, that kind of put us in some bad spots early. But overall, I think where we sit at right now, like I said a while ago, 2-1 going into conference play, you kind of feel good about it given the circumstances of where some of the games have ended up.
And looking at this early part of the season so far, going to overtime against an FCS squad, a 21-point loss to Wazoo, and then a blowout victory where you guys blow the doors off North Texas. What things are you able to kind of take away from this kind of up and down start to 2024? Well,
the up and down start, it's kind of, something. What is your guys saying with ASU? Always something university, Yep. Texas Tech kind of has some similar sayings as well, but I don't think it goes with the TTU, or at least not that I've heard in a long time. But you come out game one and the offense doesn't really sputter. I mean, it sputters on a handful of drives there towards when you're in the opponent's ends of the end zone, aren't able to get some touchdowns there, and then also put up points. I mean, you still put up 52 points. Yeah, granted, it took every bit of all 5.5 quarters, it seemed like, to get that victory, and it was very tough to watch as a Texas Tech fan. Then you go into Pullman without your lead running back, and I think Baron Morton put so much pressure on himself to where he felt like he had to win that game himself with his arm. He was making some ridiculous throws, sidearm throws, just stuff that he typically doesn't do. And also, I swear it felt like we ran 79 screenplays in that game that just did not yield much. There was sometimes it helped us out, but man, the play calling was really, really suspect in that game. And, now it leaves you kind of wavering what's going to happen with North Texas, considering, you have a top 5 passer coming into town. And a lot of the fan base was right there on, hey, I don't know if I'm going to do this for the rest of the year. Ticket sales were down for the North Texas game. It was an 11 a.m. kick. It was 99 degrees outside. I'm sunburned from my face to my wrist to my arms to my legs down. And this is the best sunburn I've ever felt, if that makes any sense, to come out and do what we did against North Texas. Taj Brooks obviously was back, was a huge key to that, giving Baron Morton that confidence in while he was back there in pass protection, and knowing that you had the guy that could get you those tough yards, 4 or 5 yards of carry, and then open things up on the back end with some of the better wide receivers that you have. And then this defense just stepped up. Now, granted, some of the passes that were intercepted weren't on the quarterback. It was just guys feeling like they felt like playing volleyball at that point in time in the game, and just tip drill. And, we just made the plays. And then we, just like I said, the running game ultimately opened up all of our passing game as such in that game. But between all 3 games, we've had a little bit of everything, the nail biters, the, hey, I want to throw everything bit of Texas Tech out in the street and burn it. And then, hey, we want to see Georgia next week. We're ready for them, So we've kind of had a trail mix of emotions these first 3 weeks of football for sure.
So on that same point, obviously the availability of Brooks, I'm sure, is the big issue. But what are some of the separating factors that have, caused this team to go from that nail biter to that demoralizing loss to that blowout victory? Like, can you make any rhyme or reason on how things are going good and bad for this team?
It's so crazy that you asked that, because you wish you could just point one thing out, because, obviously the games are won in the trenches. And me and you, when we spoke about it, a lot of the success for Arizona State and Texas Tech was going to be relying on what happens in the trenches, offensive side and defensive side of the ball. We had to replace 2 very, very veteran guys on our defensive line in Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings, who had been here for 5+ years at Texas Tech. And I don't know if you know this, but, you don't just replace guys on your defensive line that have been here that long and have established themselves. So now it's a committee that you're having to use that hasn't necessarily got the run they had seen in previous years, because you had that position solidified. Same thing, you go back to the offensive side of the ball. We had an offensive line coach change in the spring. We bring in Clay Maguire, who's very familiar with Joey Maguire, no relation. But we bring in some transfers. We get Vinny Scurry out of Toledo. We get Davion Carter out of Memphis. We have some veteran guys in Caleb Rogers, Ty Buchanan, and in a transfer in Sterling Porsche that, solidified this offensive line to where you would think that you would be okay with Taj Brooks back there in this, revamped offensive line. But it just necessarily didn't happen that way on the offensive side. And then on the defensive side, if we can't generate pressure on the quarterback, we're leaving these very, very young secondary out there to cover guys for, 4 to 5 seconds. And if you guys get any kind of time like that at any level, it's hard to cover, some of these guys for that period of time. And we just got picked apart, giving up the 500 to Maverick McIver, which is an ex-Texas Tech guy, which, that's funny that happened, that he came to Lubbock and he did that, in Lubbock to Texas Tech. Then we go to Washington State and Mateer. He's able to get out of some situations, and he's an athlete, and he made some plays with his feet and made our defense look really silly. Our linebackers got caught with their pants down on a handful of times. And, it was just, we were never ourselves in that game. And then you fast forward to last week against North Texas, and we look like a powerhouse. And it's just hard to, like I said, just, feel all of this roller coaster feelings. But, our offensive and defensive lines have not necessarily been great. They did do a little bit better against North Texas. Our defensive line still generated pressure on Chandler Morris in this game, but they still weren't able to get him down. I think we're sub 4 sacks on the year in 3 games. And, we're not going to win many Big 12 games if we're not able to get the quarterback down to the ground. But I would say that the trenches on the defensive side have really, restricted our secondary from playing the football that they need to play.
All right, so let's talk about some of these players and break down this roster for Texas Tech. Starting off with the quarterback position, Baron Morton. What have been your impressions of his play so far in 2024, and what are some of the elements that he brings to this Texas Tech offense?
He's a coach's kid. His dad is an ex-high school coach here in Lubbock, Texas. He was born in Lubbock, Texas, so Texas Tech has pretty much been running through him since birth. He, in the last quarterback that we had, that was a coach's son, went by the name of Graham Harrell. In those numbers that he put up, you would like to think that, he would have the same kind of pedigree. He has that moxie. He has, the prowess to be that guy. He's not overconfident, to where it seems like he's cocky because he knows he's good. But he's able to make the throws whenever he needs to. There's some times where he likes to change his arm angle, which we're still trying to figure out why he changes his arm angle. I don't know if it's the Adidas gear making him think he's Mahomes or something, but for whatever reason it is, he's changed his arm angles whenever he necessarily hasn't had to. But I think the North Texas game was very big for Barron, and multitude of reasons. He was making these tough, tight throws in traffic. The wide receivers were making plays, and he was playing with the best confidence that he's played with for a very long time. I mean, since he's been here, as far as a half goes, because he was pulled after the first half because it was 52-7. He's just a really good quarterback. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school, Eastland, Texas, ultimately where his dad ended up coaching anyway. And he just came back home to Lubbock. He has a lot of intangibles, but there's sometimes he gets happy in the pocket. His footwork is terrible. He tries to extend a play, but that's just not his game. And, ultimately sometimes that gets him taken down behind the sticks, and puts us behind in a key down, and that necessarily hasn't helped us out a whole lot. But I do think he has all the tools, given what he did on Saturday against North Texas to propel this team. But he's a steady kid. He's a very nice kid. And, I'm glad he's our quarterback for sure.
We got to check in on old friend Jalen Conyers, Texas Tech tight end, heading back home to his home state. How's he been fitting in so far, and how's he been contributing to this offense?
Man, it's been great. We've had some very good tight end groups over the last couple of years, and we always felt as a fan base since Maguire took over that the tight end group was a group that sometimes was underutilized, because at one point in time we had former 5-star recruit Baylor Cup here, a 6'6" guy, a very big target. We had Mason Tharp, who's still surprisingly on the team. He is 6'9". And then we had another tight end. I don't remember what his name, Henry Teeter, I believe, and he was 6'4". And collectively on the season, these guys probably got, I think it was 12 catches, something just like, come on, man. You have these matchup nightmares in the red zone and you're not utilizing them. And it was very tough to watch. In come Jalen Conyers, a pure athlete, as you guys know, ran the quarterback position. He's just, he's special with the ball in his hands, and he could go and make those tough catches. So it's been really good to see him be utilized in this offense, running across the side, making those deep catches, and, just another veteran leadership kind of guy to that tight end room. And it's been really cool to watch us utilize our tight ends for the first time, especially with the talent that Jalen Conyers brings.
Now, the college football world knows the production of Taj Brooks from that running back position, but what are some of the things, the talents, the skills that make him so dangerous and productive?
Taj Brooks is just that dude, and it's been a pleasure watching him play from the very first time he got here and to watch him grow up into what he is now. He is arguably there's a saying that goes around here in Lubbock called Red Raider for life. And, these are the guys that had stayed here through the good, through the bad. These are the guys who were in it. And he was also one of those guys that was in some of the very, very bad stuff early on. And he stayed and he perfected his craft. He's shifty. He's elusive. He doesn't seem, with his frame, 5'11", 220, similar to Scadaboo's frame body-wise, but he has wonderful body control. His vision is top tier. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see any of the game against North Texas, but some of these runs that Taj was making, he just, picked out his certain spot and then he hit the hole hard. And he's just not an easy guy to bring down. That Emmitt Smith kind of body type. You can never square him up. He never really takes a major hit, and it usually takes 2 or 3 guys to bring him to the ground. And whenever he's brought to the ground, guess what? He's falling forward for an extra 2 or 3 yards most of the time. He's just everything about his game translates to the next level. And for him to be doing that here at Texas Tech, on his way to taking over the all-time rushing record at Texas Tech is massive, and I can't wait to watch more of it. But as overall, man, he does everything. An underutilized trait he does is pass blocking. He's not afraid to get in there with a free safety, strong safety, linebacker, defensive lineman, anybody who decides to come at Baron Morton, and he'll take it head on. And he doesn't shy away from those kinds of hits. So I think, like I said, a lot of those traits that he has right now translate to the NFL. So I'm just enjoying every bit that I get to see him here in Lubbock while he's still a Red Raider.
As you mentioned, getting the commitment and signing of five-star wide receiver Micah Hudson was a significant deal and acquisition. Not too much of an impact as of yet, though it seemed like he got a few catches last week in the blowout. Is that by design, or is there other factors kind of limiting his impact early on?
This is such a touchy subject in Lubbock, Texas. You have a five-star guy, the very first one to come to your school, and it's how do you manage and maintain said player. He is, and this is me speaking of me talking to Micah Hudson while he was a high school football player, and being there, and he is a very humble kid. He is a super humble kid. If I had to guess, if you say, what kind of personality typical five stars have, they walk around and they know they're just that good, and they act to be treated as such, like, hey, I'm starting from the rip. This is what's going to happen. I'm a five-star. I'm starting. End of story. Especially if you're a five-star going to a team that's not named Georgia or Ohio State or Alabama or Texas for that. The early on in the Abilene Christian game, Maguire said after the game that, I needed to have more of my reliable guys in the game, towards the end of the game. So we didn't see him there. So it comes to week 2, Washington State. We didn't see him, and it was, clearly the game wasn't going as you wanted. So Maguire said that, we have other issues. There's all these other issues with our football team. This is kind of shouldn't be a worry, but, he's progressing along. So as a whole, collectively, and this is based on stuff that was said prior to Micah Hudson even stepping onto the field for Texas Tech, was he could have started at this team last year as a high school senior. And then the hype around this kid while he was, in spring, or not in spring practice, because he missed spring practice because he was recovering from a knee scope to clean up his meniscus, if I'm not mistaken. So he wasn't necessarily practicing until the fall camp itself. So, but he was hyped up. The Texas Tech football Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all of these were hyping, oh, here's another Micah Hudson, play from practice, another Micah Hudson this or that, another Micah Hudson this or that. And it seems like between the coaching staff and some of the media members of the football team kind of hyped this kid up a little too much. He didn't, like I said, he didn't play all the way up until spring or until fall camp. So, he was already behind the curve itself. I think I was kind of clamoring for him to, at least get some run, like, spell some of these other guys, a Jordan Brown, a Dre McCray, a Caleb Douglas, maybe not a Josh Kelly, because I think he's your number one guy. And then your Coy Aiken, the other side wide receiver. Those are guys that I think you don't need to take off the field. And, with the tempo that Texas Tech runs, you would think that you could at least throw him out there a couple of plays. I think he got 2 plays in the first game, and I think he got 3 plays in his first catch in the Washington State game. So as soon as Tech went up 52-7, the student section and the whole stadium for that against North Texas was already clamoring for him to hit the field. And I think it was good. I think the workload he got, the connection that he had with true freshman Will Hammond later on in the game, whenever he came in to spell Cameron Brown, after, the first 3 series of the third quarter, kind of gave a peek into what this Texas Tech team could be in the future. But I think his workload is just going to steadily increase. You can't just have that kind of talent sitting on the sideline. I think he's going to find his way onto the field. It could potentially be this game. Jordan Brown, one of the wide receivers that's in front of him, is kind of banged up with a shoulder injury. So you guys may see Micah Hudson in a decent dose this weekend for sure.
All right, so taking, in a big picture sense, you got obviously one of the best backs in the country, some dangerous weapons on the receiving end. What should the ASU fans expect to see schematically from the Texas Tech offense on Saturday?
On the offensive side, you're going to see a lot of motions, and it just depends because, like I said, you kind of have seen 3 different kind of games be called over the course of this season. You know, with the ACU game was still kind of vanilla. You don't want to put a lot of tape out there. The Washington State obviously just didn't go your way. You threw 285 screenplays in that game, and then you open up the playbook against North Texas, and now your offense looks unstoppable. Me personally, I think this is where Texas Tech is going to, attack this Sun Devil defense. There across the middle of the field, I saw the game between Texas State and you guys, and I saw a couple different occasions that you guys were burnt deep or burnt in the middle of the field. And I think this is something that Coach Kitley is going to try to exploit after he sets the tone rushing the ball. I believe Taj Brooks is going to get you guys are going to see a heavy dose of one of the Big 12's best running backs to try to set up play action and RPOs. And if we get that established, as you guys know, it's very hard to cover any kind of wide receiver room, no matter how good or bad they are, for longer than 5 seconds. Coy Aiken is a deep threat guy. He's from Stephenville. If you want to go look up his stats from his senior year in high school, he led the nation in high school in receiving yards and touchdowns. I think it was like 53, something absurd. He was that guy, and he was a preferred walk-on here at Texas Tech, earned a scholarship, or I think he was one of the last scholarship players that Maguire had his first year. And, he's done work, and he's just a really good football player. Josh Kelly, obviously you guys had seen him in the Pac-12 previously. I looked at the stats from last year's game. He didn't really do much. I think 3 catches for like 20 yards, nothing that sticks out on the stat page. Jalen Conyers, y'all's ex-tight end. I'm sure you guys know what he brings to the table, but I do expect Coach Kitley to try to exploit the middle of the field and then set the tone in the trenches early.
So moving over to the defensive side, last weekend, obviously an improvement after some, troublesome moments for those first 2 games. So if we're looking at, what areas can be cleaned up on the Red Raider defense, what do you think are the main things that allowed that, 50-plus point allowance to Abilene Christian, 300-plus on the ground to Washington State? What do they need to do to clean that up, and have they already made strides on that?
I think they have made the strides. I think what happened in the Washington State game, Coach Maguire put us in some very, very silly down and distance. Washington State started on the Texas Tech side of the football field 9 times in that game. And you don't win very many games, especially if your defense isn't playing well. And now you're putting them with their backs against the wall to try to, get a stop. And that's just, too hard to overcome, especially with the youth that you have on the defensive front and the defensive backfield. It's just hard to overcome. Coach DeRuyter's been really great about making adjustments from game 1 to game 2 to game 3. And I think that the clear message has been to pretty much man up. This is where you need to be. You've been here. A majority of these guys in the secondary, yet they're young. A majority have been here for the entire tenure of Coach Maguire. So this is one of those things you just look in the mirror and just say that you're better than what you've been playing. The defensive front and the outside linebackers kind of took some hits on the injury front early on. 3-year starter Joe Adedire was injured with a knee injury, and he's done for the year. We had an up-and-coming outside linebacker by the name of Dylan Spencer. He had a coming out party with Amir Washington in our bowl game against Cal. He blew out his knee. And those were these very integral pieces on this defense to, with veteran leadership that you lost early on in the season. And, DeRuyter's just found a way to get it done. Yes, we haven't made the strides on the defensive front to get the quarterback down, but we have made the strides to keep a quarterback in the pocket and not be able to run around like Mateer did early in game 2 against Washington State, which ultimately, caused us to lose that game. I mean, Mateer, I think, is the real deal. He just played lights out against Washington. And he kind of made our defense look silly. We took some very, very bad angles. We were undisciplined. There was a lot of penalties in the secondary, a bunch of guys not lined up in the right spot. It was just As far as the defense goes, it seems like it hasn't got better based on some of the stuff that's been happening. But DeRuyter has been really, really good about getting his guys up for the game. And I think, the North Texas was the biggest stamp on that, keeping Chandler Morris, former 4-star quarterback, inside the pocket, making them very uncomfortable, even though we didn't get them down to the ground. And then, manning up on some of these smaller wide receivers that North Texas presented. Our guys just looked like they were better than North Texas, which you would expect, Texas Tech and North Texas on paper. You're like, oh, there's no way North Texas stands a chance in this game. Knowing everything going into that game, you're like, oh, North Texas may shock the world kind of thing. So I think DeRuyter's made all the right necessary changes. We've had some of our younger guys starting to step up, and it starts mainly in that middle linebacker group with Jacob Rodriguez and co-defensive freshman of the year, Ben Roberts.
All right, so I'm going to put you in the shoes of ASU offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo. What kind of game plan are you drawing up to attack this Texas Tech defense?
Cam Scattaboo, or anything that has him involved. I know that what he brings to the table. I mean, I compare him to a little bit bigger version of Deuce Vaughn, and I may get flack for saying that, but Scattaboo is just that guy that's very hard to get to the ground, have fun squaring him up, have fun in the open field, all of these intangibles that he has. I know that Texas Tech struggled mightily with some of the running backs coming out of the backfield against Abilene Christian. That ultimately killed us in some regards of that game, especially on third downs. And then also some of the running back plays that they schemed against Washington State. But I'm getting Cam Scattaboo involved. I'm also getting some of the wide receiving group involved as well, because your wide receiver group to our secondary group, as far as height goes and speed go, you guys will have the edge. Our two starters in Braylon Lux and Marion Horn, both are very good cornerbacks and very physical, but both of them are 5'11". It's just, if it comes to a situation where you're having to jump for the ball, the edge is going to go to the wide receivers in the Arizona State wide receiver room. It's just going to be tough. So they're going to have to play tougher than what they have played in the first 3 games of the season. But I'm attacking the middle of the field. I'm attacking, I'm using the running back out of the backfield. And then, I'm just expecting my quarterback in redshirt freshman, Sam Levitt, to make some plays with his feet. I mean, that little scamper that he had against Texas State is something that concerns me. And you're going to almost essentially try to put DeRuyter in a spot to where you have to spy this kid just to make sure that you stay in the game.
All right, so fans know the name of like a Taj Brooks or certainly a Jalen Conyers, but who's a guy maybe a little bit under the radar, on maybe one on each side of the ball, that could be an X factor in determining Saturday's outcome?
On the defensive side, I'm going to go with free safety Chapman Lewis. He is a 4-star recruit out of Burleson, Texas. And he's an ex-track guy, a 200, 400-meter guy. He's got the sideline-to-sideline speed. True sophomore. He actually got playing time, and I think they burned his red shirt last year for playing time. On the defensive side, he's ultimately going to be that center fielder that Texas has for the upcoming years, and he's a name to keep an eye on. He has 2 interceptions on the year. He was ejected in the Washington State game, which I think had a play on how this defense played for the second half on a targeting call, which those could go either way on most of the times. But I think that was, I'll call a spade a spade. I think it was garbage that he got kicked out. But everybody from the couch, looking on TV, it's a garbage call. Especially with targeting. But Chapman Lewis on the defensive side, man, he's a gamer. As far as the name that doesn't get said a whole lot on the defensive side, just because of the CJ Baskervilles in front of him, the AJ McCarty, the Braylon Lux kind of guys in the secondary. He's kind of lost in the numbers game, but he is a hell of a ball player, and he's going to be a problem in this conference for the next upcoming years and the rest of this year. And on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with our running back group behind Taj Brooks. We suffered an unfortunate injury to our second string running back Cam Valdez with a knee injury, undisclosed knee injury, but he is done for the year. So now we have 2 true freshman running backs behind one of the nation's best running backs in Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams. Cameron Dickey is a name that you're going to start hearing more and more. He has the similar kind of body type as Taj, but he could just open things up. He is also an ex-track guy. In a practice earlier on this fall, they clocked him at like 22.3 miles per hour on a dead sprint on a screen pass from a dead stop to just full go. He's got wheels beyond wheels. His vision is getting better. And then true freshman Jacoby Williams, which is just kind of like that switch, that utility running back. He could do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. He's probably undersized for pass protection wise but he could go out, make the tough catch. He's very tough to bring down in the open field. And he's one of those running backs that, could make you look silly in the open field if you try to take them one by one. But I would say our running back room, those 2 guys that are behind Taj Brooks, those are names that you're going to start hearing a whole lot of more with the injury to Cam Valdez.
So, of course, Saturday's ball game will be the Big 12 conference opener for both teams, and for ASU, the long-awaited debut in conference play in the Big 12. The last 13, 14 months, obviously, folks around here have been very, very excited about this move, and we've seen it and talked about it from like the ASU perspective and the perspective of the teams that are leaving the Pac-12 into the Big 12. But let's get your take on that. What's the feel like around the Texas Tech community about these 4 teams, including Arizona State, that now have joined the Big 12?
The feeling's been good, with the exception to Utah for whatever reason. But, you guys could take that for face value. But, Utah just hasn't, got the run. And then also Colorado. And that's more or less not because of Colorado, but just because who runs Colorado's football program.
I get it.
But, the Arizona schools, we were very excited about, Arizona with the Wildcat, especially on the basketball side, having, arguably the best basketball conference. And then you're adding an Arizona to it. That was very exciting. I have family, as you know, Joe, in the Phoenix area. So I've actually been around Arizona State more than I'd like to think the average Lubbock person would have, for sure. So I've actually been to Arizona State football games and been around that program earlier on in my life, my teenage years. And it was great. Another reason for me to go visit family in the Phoenix area, in the Tucson area. I was very excited about those of you guys coming across. I was very excited about Colorado just because, you want to be another team that, just beats Colorado up. And then Utah, just because, hey, it's Utah. They're kind of asking for it. If you personally ask me, I think their fan base and everything that they're about is just, they're asking for it. And they're going to get a rude awakening when the very first time they travel to Lubbock, Texas for a football game. I tell you that much. But overall, the fan perspective here has been great. Wanting to see some of these teams in the Big 12, just more power to our conference. And we're here for it. And, we, as much as I love it, we also don't want to be a part of that history of losing the first game to a team coming into the Big 12 having their first game in the Big 12 conference either. So we'll see what happens.
Last question before we get you out of here is a 2-parter. So first off, what sort of game day environment do you expect it to be out there in Lubbock? And then second, for those Sun Devils who are going to be making the trip, what are some local spots they need to check out?
Game day experience, tortillas and batteries. If you like to check out Reddit pages, because that's apparently what we do sometimes. And I've been around Lubbock for a lot of football games, and I've never seen a battery been thrown, but apparently it happens. Double A's or triple A's, take your pick. You're going to see a lot of tortillas fly. I have a shirt that says tortilla toss. This is just something that happens in Lubbock, Texas. Game atmosphere is top notch. Lubbock is a college town. This is the only thing going on in a 5-hour radius. Dallas is 5.5 hours from here. Albuquerque's another 5 hours a different direction. And there's no big, other than maybe Abilene Christian to the southeast of you, about 2.5 hours away. So this is like the the big thing around these parts. The atmosphere is great. The south end zone, I don't know if either of you guys are. Joe, I think you said you're not going because you went to the San Marcos game.
Yeah.
But Denny, are you traveling out to Lubbock?
Yeah, I'll be out there covering the game. Yeah, I was out there for the 2017 games, but I understand like the stadium looks different since then.
Yeah, the stadium definitely does look different. That south end zone is top tier, probably one of the coolest south end zones in the Big 12, if not, and then it's also connected directly to our football training facility, which is still under construction. It's about 80% done right now. But I mean, all of the brickwork, a majority of the masonry work is done on that facility. So whenever you're actually in Lubbock to take a look at the south end zone, you're going to be very impressed with some of the facilities that Texas Tech has, given that it's in the middle of the Panhandle. But the game atmosphere itself, as much as everybody says we do all of this bad, every fan base has those bad apples. I can't say that they don't exist. But for a majority of the time, our fan base is going to welcome you in like you're a local. They'll show you around. They'll show you what we do here. They'll welcome you to talk football, have a beer, whatever the case, hey, let's share a brisket sandwich and talk about some football. Tell me about ASU and you tell me about Texas Tech. And, it's a welcoming town, as much as some of the perception has been around what happens at Texas Tech. The new entrance for the visiting team is right above our band. So that may be a little daunting for some of you guys coming in. The actual tunnel itself is probably like 600 feet away from the actual field house where your guys will come into the game, and it's all under the stadium. And it's a really, really cool environment. So if you're on the field level watching it from that tunnel towards our south end zone, like I said, our facilities are top notch. I don't think you're going to see much better in the Big 12. So I can't wait for, all the Tempe folk and Arizona folk to come see the south end zone and what Texas Tech has to offer. I think it's great. And then as far as, recommendations, shameless plug, there's this burger spot I put on the map. Seriously, I did. It was just this smash burger spot. It's on Broadway, probably about a quarter mile away from the football stadium itself. It is called Wrecked Burgers. It is a smash burger place owned by Texas Tech alumni guys. They probably, and I've been here a majority of my whole life, this is probably one of, or not the best burgers in Lubbock, Texas. Like I said, the game is at a 2:30 kickoff. So if pregame before, if you guys don't know anybody tailgating wise, I would stop in there at Wrecked to get a burger and a drink and then walk over to the stadium, or after the game, just to walk by on Broadway. There's a bunch of other places. If you're a margarita person, there's this place called Chimmy's right across the street from Wrecked. So if you want a burger and then you just want to go margarita it up in Lubbock, Texas, Chimmy's is the place to go. And there's some more other restaurants right there. This place called Crickets and some other places right there on Broadway. And it's right around the main entrance to the campus itself. If you guys are off the beaten path, if some of your fan base gets here early, like on Friday, some things to do. Buddy Holly, capital of the world, Buddy Holly himself. We have a Buddy Holly museum. We have a Buddy Holly park. We have everything Buddy Holly here in Lubbock, Texas. So if you want to catch up on your Buddy Holly, Lubbock's the place to be. If you like windmills for whatever reason, we have a windmill museum here as well. So if it's not windmills or wind, I mean, we have something for you. We have the Silent Wings Museum, which is out by our airport, which you guys will see whenever you guys fly in. Ranching Heritage Center is another cool place to go to. It's right off of Texas Tech campus as well. The Italian Garden is a really good Italian restaurant, which is downtown Lubbock. If anybody's in that general area or vicinity, that'd be another place that I would check out. But yeah, that I would probably leave. Oh, I can't forget the one and only Spanky's. Yes, that is a burger joint, but they are well known for their fried cheese. And oh, baby, if you have an appetite, one or two of those guys will take care of you for the day. They're thick, they're cheesy. I mean, there's just no other way of explaining fried cheese at Spanky's. And that is pretty much catty corner to the football stadium training facility. You could see right into the back practice facility fields. on Texas Tech's campus from the Spanky's parking lot. So I would give Spanky's, Wrecked, Italian Garden. I would give all of those places a shot. For sure. There's a Mexican restaurant here. There's not really good Mexican restaurants here. It's just Lubbock, Texas. It's all Tex-Mex kind of stuff. But this place called Montelongo's, it's on the Clovis Highway. That's, for whatever reason, every time a governor of Texas is visiting Lubbock, Texas, this is the place they have to go. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, those are some of the places I would stop by, especially if you're visiting the Lubbock area for this football game.
Awesome, man. All right, before we part ways, tell our listeners and viewers how they can follow along and keep up with the Red Raiders. Give whatever social media shout-outs you got there.
I am on Instagram and Twitter at TTU Presidente, and that is not Presidente, that's Presidente, because my last name is Lopez, and that's Pezidente. And then you could also follow our podcast, Tortillas and Takes, also on Twitter. I don't think we're on Instagram. I think Twitter's just our main pub. And if you want to hear anything about Lubbock, Texas, talk sports, I'm willing to talk Lubbock all night and day. This is home for me. I'm from a farm town about 30 miles east of Lubbock, and this is my Dallas. And it's always been my Dallas. And, Lubbock will always have a special place in my heart because this is home. And Texas Tech is also home for me as well. So TTU Presidente, Joe Lopez, follow me. Do whatever, we like to put content out there, usually not garbage or any of that other stuff. Just tell it how it is. Good, bad, or the other, we do it.
Now, before we take a deep dive behind enemy lines, this one goes out to the homies. If you're looking for some fire food from a restaurant owned and operated by diehard Sun Devils, make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. BE is a family-owned business that began in 1995 with a combination of authentic recipes, competitive prices, and a comfortable atmosphere. That all makes dining with Burrito Express a unique experience. You've seen their passion on Twitter. You've seen how incredibly active they are with supporting Sun Devil student athletes with a variety of NIL deals. It is safe to say if you're part of the Sun Devil family and if you're listening to us, you dang sure are, well then Burrito Express is a business well worth your support. And by the way, the food is top tier all the way. Burrito Express has 7 Valley locations, 2 in Gilbert, 1 in Mesa, 1 in Chandler, 1 in Scottsdale, a Tempe location near Kyrene and Elliott, and the ASU location near Rural and University, just about a half mile from Mountain America Stadium. They're open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, while some locations are open as early as 6 a.m. during the week, and from 8 to 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. So we got an early game coming up this week. You're going to be watching it on TV. Grab some Burrito Express before you get things set up for the ball game. You can order online at theburritoexpress.com for pickup or delivery. Be sure to give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BurritoEXP and on TikTok at Burrito Express AZ. Now, before Brad and I take a look at Texas Tech up ahead for the Sun Devils, if you want to know all about what ASU's got going on coming up in Lubbock, what the Sun Devils are up to on the practice field, all the personnel, injury issues, all the updates that can be given, well, the best place, other than what Brad and I do, of course, is devilsdigest.com. Become a subscriber on Devil's Digest. That gets you a variety of things. That gets you access to premium content across the Rivals network. So you want to learn about other teams, other players, do a full landscape inventory of the recruiting game. You can check out all the profiles and stories for all the big-time recruits ASU is going to be after here. Of course, with the school year in full swing, won't be long before you get some basketball coverage. Baseball as well. It is a one-stop shop at devilsdigest.com. If you are a diehard Sun Devil, if you truly bleed maroon and gold, become a subscriber on Devil's Digest. Get in there in the huddle, the premier message board for Sun Devil content. Once again, get locked in, locked on to devilsdigest.com to become a subscribed member of Rivals.com. All right, Brad, here we go. This is finally getting started in a very official way. From when the news was announced the same day as our first ever live show last August to this very moment, ASU is playing a game of football in Big 12 action. Obviously, it's been a member of the Big 12 here for these first 3 non-conference games, but getting the conference side of things going. Saturday afternoon in Lubbock, Texas, against the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. Now, there is some really unique, really interesting history between these two programs, and it's a history that kind of involves a lack of history. If you didn't know, from 1932 to 1957, ASU and Texas Tech were two teams that were both part of the same conference. The old Border Conference also included the likes of Arizona, NAU, New Mexico State, UTEP, and a few others, but they never met at any point during those 25 years or so that they were in the same conference. If you look up and do a little research on the matter, it appears that the issue was that the segregation still existed in parts of Texas where ASU did not want to participate in playing teams that did not allow all players to play. Now then, if you fast forward, of course, until the late 20th century and this part of the 21st century that we're involved in right now, ASU, Texas Tech, they split the all-time series so far, 2 games apiece. The first meeting was an ASU win in Tempe in 1999. Then Texas Tech with that victory in the 2013 Holiday Bowl. I know a lot of us remember. Of course, the most memorable encounter these two teams have had, at least in the eyes of Sun Devil fans, September 10th, 2016, when Kalen Ballage scored 8 touchdowns, helping ASU beat a Patrick Mahomes-led Red Raider squad in Tempe by a score of 68-55. Then they went back to Lubbock next year, and Texas Tech claimed a win that season. So in those 4 games, ASU is 2-0 at home and dropped games at a neutral site and in Lubbock. So this is a matchup, an encounter that has had a few back and forth over the last 10 to 25 years. So a little bit to play for here, as far as some bragging rights. People remember those games. Those were less than 10 years ago. Folks remember those 2 games, especially in 16 and 17, and I remember that one in 2013. Really disheartening after an otherwise very spectacular Sun Devil season in 2013.
2013 was part of the curse, right? You were there?
That was part of the curse. I was actually in the booth helping out my dad in that 2013 Holiday Bowl.
That to this day is the coldest I've ever been, which a open air press box in San Diego doesn't seem like the most likely culprit, but it was frigid in that press box. Yeah, and ASC of course laid an egg. They were kind of maybe a little down after the Pac-12 title game result went the way it did to end up in the Holiday Bowl in that 2016 game. Of course, Ballage scoring 8 touchdowns, but lest we forget, friend of the program, Demario Richard at 30 carries, over 100 yards. So it should be an interesting matchup, and hopefully this one doesn't have like a 45-minute tornado delay like the 2017 matchup had, stalling things up a little bit. But this is going to be real interesting. They're a really talented team, but have had a bit of a roller coaster year, as we'll dive into. But they seem to be kind of maybe shaking off some of the early season cobwebs because they played with some better intensity against North Texas.
Yeah, and just taking a large scope view of this program, I've often thought in a lot of ways that Texas Tech kind of resembles ASU in some capacities. For the last 15 years or so, Texas Tech has hovered just a few games like above or below the 500 mark. We've seen that a lot here. Tech has not exceeded 8 wins in a season since 2009, which coincidentally was the final year for the late legendary head coach Mike Leach. He, of course, engineered what has to be considered like the best decade of football that Texas Tech has ever had. That was like Pac-12 after dark, before that was even a thing, before the Pac-12 was even a thing. I just remember some of the wildest, weirdest games that you'd watch just as a college football fan seemed to include Texas Tech and Mike Leach. Heading into this season, Texas Tech, of course, is coached by Joey Maguire. 2024 is his 3rd season at the helm for the Red Raiders. He's 17-12, including the 3 games of this season. Had 8 wins in year 1, 7 in year 2. He was a longtime Texas high school coach who spent 5 years as an assistant at Baylor before being given the keys at Texas Tech prior to the 2022 season. As he crept into the 2024 season, the Red Raiders were picked 9th in the 16-team preseason Big 12 media poll for 2024. But as you mentioned, they're 2-1 this year. And after a dicey first 2 games, the Red Raiders enter this contest with a little kickstart of momentum. So just to kind of sum up the first few games, that first game, they narrowly survived against FCS Abilene Christian winning 52-51 in overtime. Texas Tech allowed over 600 yards of offense, including more than 500 through the air. But running back Taj Brooks and Josh Kelly each had 150 yards. Brooks, of course, rushing, Kelly receiving. Now, a little fun fact about that opener. You know who the leading tackler was for Abilene Christian in that ball game? That would be Will Schaefer, former Sun Devil, had 12 tackles for them in that narrow defeat that they had.
So no longer at Utah State then?
He had a short bit at Utah State during the spring. To my knowledge, just things did not necessarily click there. And yeah, he was looking for a new home and ended up at Abilene Christian. I'm not sure he's done in the remaining games, but double-digit tackles for good old Will in that opener, almost helping them claim that massive upset. Week 2 for Red Raiders, not nearly as close. They went to Washington State, who all of a sudden looking like a world beater. Cougs ran for over 300 yards. The absence of Taj Brooks, that was a huge factor. Tech lost that game 37-16. And just recently, this past week, Texas Tech exploded for 52 first-half points en route to a 66-21 win over North Texas. Obviously, that could have been a heck of a lot worse with the 52 scored in the first half. Brooks returned. He had 109 rushing yards. And that 66 spot by Texas Tech, that's the most points they've scored since September 8th of 2018. So some momentum there, but some questionable play as well. Again, some general similarities to ASU to where, you've had a lot of good. Obviously, you're 3-0. You haven't suffered that loss. You don't have that super close game overtime like Texas Tech did against Abilene Christian. But again, I think if you look at both teams from a wide view, you see some good things, some areas of potential concern. That's why this Saturday is really going to prove a lot for both teams.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting because, going back to the larger picture view that you talked about, you wonder if maybe some of the blooms coming off the rose of the Joey Maguire era and, he was his early kind of success. You've seen some other programs in Texas kind of go, with a coach that has roots in the obviously very fertile fields of Texas high school football. But, after the excitement of that first season, things just haven't been going their way a little bit. So we'll see after the course correction and if maybe the win over North Texas is something that they can kickstart them and get things going. As you heard Joe Lopez talked about, the recruiting's really picked up, so the talent level in Lubbock has risen. So we'll see if perhaps the sluggishness of those first 2 weeks is shaken off. Might it's kind of the old adage of the opponents usually figure it out the week before they play ASU. So it's going to be a big battle against Texas Tech. Of course, ASU's efforts in the Lone Star State have been pretty significant since Kenny Dillingham has been here. So getting a second straight win in that state would be huge. In addition to just improving to 4-0.
And taking a look at the Texas offense, many of us college football fans of a few decades are used to seeing Texas Tech's name listed there at or near the top of a lot of offensive categories. And so far, especially with that 66-point outburst, you're going to see that as well. They're in the top 15 in the nation in scoring offense, a little under 45 points per game, top 5 in pass offense, a little bit under 360 passing yards per game. The guy doing that, quarterback Baron Morton, he has been in the Red Raider program since 2021. He threw for 2,874 yards with 22 touchdowns and 14 interceptions across his entire Texas Tech career entering this season, and he is trending toward far surpassing those cumulative numbers across this season alone, as he has 974 passing yards, about 325 per game with 10 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions in 3 games this year. He ranks 5th in the country and is one of 4 Big 12 quarterbacks in the top 6 nationally in passing yards. He's got a lot of weapons. We'll talk about the most important one who joins him in the backfield. But so far, so good. Very sharp numbers for Morton. Though we did hear, of course, from our friend Joe Lopez some of the maybe critiques and criticisms of him. But on paper, the stats look really good.
A veteran presence back there, not much of a running threat as ASU's seen the last couple of weeks. But, the interception numbers have really kind of been something that's plagued him throughout his career. So we'll see. And he's certainly not played a defense ASU's caliber to this point, and especially with the havoc and different looks that Brian Ward likes to bring against quarterbacks. We'll see if that line can hold up and if what Morton's able to do in terms of facing that pressure and not making mistakes in the face of it.
And the top guy on this entire team, and obviously, of course, the offense as well, the most important piece of this entire squad, running back Josh Brooks. He's a beast, a 230-pounder. He's been with this program since 2020. He entered 2024 with more than 3,000 career rushing yards after rushing for more than 1,500 yards last year with 10 rushing scores. He's the 4th leading career rusher actively in the FBS with 3,314 rushing yards. He's played in 2 of Tech's 3 games this year. He has 262 yards, so he's gone over 100 yards in both games he's played. He also has 77 career receptions, including 3 this season. He had 8 100-yard rushing efforts in 2023, and as mentioned, he's 2 for 2 so far this year. He's someone that can do a little bit of everything. He is the difference maker, a huge reason why they had a lot of challenges up there in the Palouse against Washington State in that ball game because he was absent for that particular one. But make no mistake about it, one of the absolute best in the country, very likely a Sunday guy for quite a bit of time. Brooks is someone whose name is going to be called a lot this Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, one of the nation's just best backs overall. A guy who's going to be able to bruise that defense. I mean, he's a big back who likes to hammer away, and one of those guys who tends to get stronger as the game goes on. And this is an offense that really likes to establish the run. Perhaps maybe a little bit counter to the Mike Leach era prototype or stereotype rather that folks might have burned in their minds. But I mean, this is a team that likes to run counter a lot, and when you have a back of that size, of that quality, obviously the numbers speak for themselves. But he's as you heard in our opponent preview that he's not alone in terms of being a quality backfield, but certainly a guy that much like Cam Scattaboo, that this is an offense that likes to get him the ball early and often.
And one of those top names when Brooks gets a little breather, true freshman Cameron Dickey. He's rushed 18 times for 105 yards with the touchdown in 3 games this year. Last week he got his heaviest dose of action, 75 yards on 10 carries. Now looking at the pass catchers for Texas Tech, a fairly familiar name, Josh Kelly. He's got 21 catches for 287 yards with 2 touchdowns. If that does ring a bell, as you heard, he played for Washington State last year and Fresno State before that. For Wazoo a year ago, he had 61 catches for 923 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he's used to being the guy out there. Coy Eakin, he leads the team with 3 touchdown catches as part of his 11 receptions for 200 yards. Caleb Douglas, a former Florida transfer, he's got 10 catches, 137 yards and a touchdown. And a name you heard quite a bit about in the opponent preview, Micah Hudson, the highest ranked recruit ever signed by Texas Tech, 4 catches for 47 yards. Last year, or this past recruiting class rather, he was the number 1 player in the entire state of Texas for 2024, the number 9 overall recruit by Rivals. So a top 10 overall recruit. And you all know, because ASU is in the thick of things recruiting the state of Texas, a lot of good players there. So they got the number 1 player in the state last year. You kind of wonder, like you mentioned, Brad, it seems like people have career days against ASU or they get right before ASU. Something has me thinking that Hudson's going to, whether it's in defeat or victory, that Hudson's going to go out there and have a huge game this Saturday.
Yeah, in garbage time last week against North Texas, he got in and had a few catches and nearly took one to the house as well. So maybe that get right game is just around the corner for him. But yeah, going back to on the group, Josh Kelly is Morton's number 1 guy and a veteran presence, a guy that ASU has seen before. But Coy Eakin's another guy who can stretch the field. Had a long touchdown against North Texas. So we've talked in recent weeks about ASU's cornerbacks having to step up as the difficulty ramps up. They're going to be without the Terence Welch, another key piece of that group. So they're going to have their hands full because this is with a veteran quarterback and some guys who are able to kind of stretch the field and also kind of do some stuff underneath. It's going to be an interesting matchup and a stern challenge for the Devil Corners.
And moving on to the tight ends, Texas Tech uses quite a few. They've got some good ones. And, we mentioned that Josh Kelly might be a familiar name. Well, here's a name that is guaranteed to be familiar, of course. Jalen Conyers, who spent the previous 3 seasons at ASU, transferred to Texas Tech this offseason. He technically hasn't started any of the first 3 games, but he's tied for second on the team with 11 catches and 2 touchdown receptions, and also ranks 4th on Texas Tech with 105 receiving yards. Mason Tharp has started all 3 games, but has just 2 catches for 8 yards. Another name out there, John John Carlos Miller II. He's got 82 yards on 4 receptions with 2 touchdowns. He's a transfer from Elon. So, similar to what ASU wants to do and is starting to do, multiple tight ends being put to use there. And again, we know that Jalen Conyers is targeting this game as one that he wants to have his best of the year, I'm sure. I'm also sure that ASU's defense and ASU as a whole wants to prevent that from happening. So, of course, we know that storyline is going to be a very, very big one on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Conyers did some great things while he was here, and high-class individual. And as you heard earlier, Shamari Simmons also looking forward to squaring off against his former teammate there as well. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how the tight ends are used. I mean, going back to this is a program that usually has some pretty good tight ends. Like, it was Jason Morrow back in that 2013 year, had to really torch the Devils for a lot of yards in the Holiday Bowl. But having a guy like Conyers and Tharp, being a guy who's got a huge frame, more in a blocking role right now. But we've seen what Conyers can do with his rare athleticism at that size. So it's going to be an interesting challenge for the Sun Devil safeties and nickel guys.
So there's some high points on offense, to say the least, for Texas Tech, as is often the case. But you flip the coin over to defense. These are some areas ASU can exploit. They allow 36.3 points per game, about 182 rushing yards per game, with 3 rushing touchdowns in just 3 games. That's 3 per game. They allow almost 280 passing yards, so they're up there letting folks get about 460 yards of total offense per game. They rank 102nd. Excuse me. It's even worse than that. 122nd nationally in scoring defense. That's the worst of all power conference teams. They rank 123rd in total defense, 119th in pass defense, and 107th in rush defense. They only have 2 sacks on the year, and there are only 2 teams, Ball State and Central Florida, that have fewer. They're even on turnovers, 5-5. So they're, obviously balancing that part of things out. So defensively, there are a lot of areas that ASU can potentially exploit here. To put some names on it, Jacob Rodriguez, a one-time Virginia transfer, redshirted due to injury last year at Texas Tech. He leads the team with 21 tackles. Ben Roberts has 17 this year. He had 107 tackles last year for Texas Tech as a redshirt freshman. You heard about Chapman Lewis, leads the team with 2 interceptions. On the defensive line, Emorian Banks leads the team with 3 tackles for loss. He's a big 6'5", 300-pounder in his 4th year in the program. So once again, even though ASU offensively took a little bit to get going and had some hot and cold streaks last week, you look at this matchup with the Texas Tech defense, and the Sun Devils really should be able to do some things, especially if you're getting a little healthier on that side of the ball on the offensive line.
Yeah, so they run out of a 3-3-5 base, and as you mentioned, struggles in both ways, because in the opener they gave up a 500-yard performance to an FCS team, but then they got run all over by the Cougs. Now then they face a G5 team, North Texas, still trying to figure things out. They're able to get their mojo back, force multiple turnovers there, including a nice pick 6. But they've, like ASU did a week ago, they struggle to get off the field on 3rd downs. They've been hit by untimely penalties and a high number of penalties on the defensive side as well. But I really think that the strength of that defense is at that second level. You talk about Roberts, a freshman All-American a season ago. Jacob Rodriguez, a guy who can attack from that outside linebacker spot. They have some veteran performers in the secondary, and C.J. Baskerville, cornerback, Braylon Lux as well, who had the pick 6. I believe that both are officially questionable. As Texas Tech released a kind of a Monday injury report, but I do think that this is an area, and we'll get to a little bit later on in our keys to the game, that ASU has an opportunity to kind of, as they've done to great success through the first couple games, being able to kind of dictate the pace if they're able to win in the trenches.
And before we jump into our keys for the game and our scoreboard predictions, a huge shout out to Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Their SDFC Cares program allows qualified individuals to request financial assistance by completing an application and submitting verification of medical expenses, which are all evaluated by the Patient Services Committee. SDFC Cares is the flagship program through which Sun Devil Family Charities provides financial assistance to qualified applicants, individuals, and their immediate families who have an affiliation with Arizona State University and are facing financial hardship due to a serious health or medical conditions are encouraged to submit an application for assistance. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to an unexpected medical condition. And volunteer and sponsorship opportunities are also available, and these opportunities can all be found online at their website, sundevilfamily.org. Be sure to follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/sundevilfamilycharities and on Twitter at sundevil_family. All right, Brad, if you want to kick things off, what is key number 1 for this ball game?
This is the cliche of all football cliches, but you got to start with the ground game. You got to rediscover the mojo that you had in the first 2 weeks. Now, whether it's the fatigue of a short week, the kind of short preparation, but Texas State's defense, and granted a good G5, but a G5 nonetheless, really put the kibosh on ASU's efforts to run the ball. This is a defense with Texas Tech that can be run upon. And as we talked about it in some of the keys in prior weeks, having the success on the ground, whether it's Cam Scadaboo or getting some other guys involved as well. Maybe you get Sam Levitt a little bit more with some designed runs, but if you're able to move the ball on the ground, you're able to obviously gain yards, hopefully put up some points. But you're also able to shorten the game and get that explosive Texas Tech offense to stay on the sidelines and not have to, don't have to face all the myriad weapons they have over there. So I think this game, not necessarily you don't need Cam to probably run for another 262, even though it'd be a lot cooler if he did. But if you're able to continue to pound out that this should be a game where ASU, if the offensive line performance in the trenches and in the run blocking is more what we've seen in weeks 1 and week 2 than what we saw on a short week 3. Now it's some added rest. This should be a game where they run for over 200 yards, and I think if they do that, they're in great shape to get a win.
Side note before my first key, I bought a magnet at the Austin airport because that's kind of like my trinket. When I travel, get a little something, from each place, even though I've been to Austin several times. It was a picture that had Matthew McConaughey, the Dazed and Confused scene, and the caption, "Be a lot cooler if you did." And so I'm a sucker for good marketing, so I got that, and it is now on my refrigerator. As for my first key, I'll keep the offense on the field. Want to see a balanced offense here. Last 2 weeks, ASU's obviously got the wins. They made the plays when they needed to, but last week it was a little bit more the pass game and some timely runs, whereas the bulk of the running was really shut down by Texas State. Week before, couldn't do much through the air, but you had Cam Scadaboo put together a record-setting performance and one that will live in Sun Devil fame for a while. Against a defense like Texas Tech's, you should be able to balance things. They don't really shut one thing down or the other. They've been getting gashed, as you talked about. They went from a 500-yard individual passing game in week 1 to a 300-yard team rushing effort that almost had about nearly 200 from the quarterback for Washington State. Obviously, things resolved themselves last week for Texas Tech, but it still is what it is. So offensively, you just want to see guys doing what they can do. You want to see Scadaboo and the rest, running the ball effectively. You want to see Sam Levitt hitting his targets, hitting some more of those downfield passes, and build that momentum from that one long completion of Jordan Tyson last week. You just want them to see them get tighter and more efficient on both areas of the offense. And obviously a component of that, a huge component of that, is the offensive line, and you get a little healthier there, which hopefully should help matters.
All right, key number 2, switching over to the Sun Devil defense. Now, in that first half, as Texas State was moving the ball up and down and getting that 21-7 lead, one of the primary and most damning factors for the Devils was they could not get off the field on third down. By the time that the Bobcats had run out to that 21-7 lead, they converted on 6 of 8 third downs. You can't do that. You got to get off the field. ASU's a good defense, but if you let an offense make those conversions, and especially when it's like a third and moderate to third and long, those are back-breaking plays as they accumulate. And when you have the weapons that Texas Tech has, that's going to get you a loss in Lubbock. So for the Devils, get better and get off the field on third down.
For me, I'll keep it with the defense there, and you want to see them rattle the quarterback there, rattle Baron Morton for Texas Tech. He's taken good care of the football through the first 3 games of this year, as we talked about in his first couple years at Tech. Some turnover issues there as well. We've seen ASU, you saw it last week, capitalizing on the turnovers at the most important times. And if that can become a hallmark of this defense, that will take this team very, very far. just playing on the road in I'm sure a game atmosphere that is highly rejuvenated from this time a week ago, they're going to be pretty fired up. So if you can get in there and if you can really rattle Morton and force him to commit some turnovers, take advantage of those, put points on the board, really get those momentum plays in your favor, that's going to be a huge deal. Far too often last week with Jordan McLeod, did you just see him be able to operate doing pretty much whatever he wanted to, picking his spots, being effective in the run game. So you just got to get a lot more pressure in the backfield, which, is certainly possible. And once again, talking about getting healthier, get guys like Dorba and even Crook out there who can rush the quarterback. ASU should be as equipped as it's been all year to do some damage in that regard.
Key number 3 for me, special teams has got to be perfect. That means that Canyon Floyd continues to flip the field. Ian Hershey converts on those field goal attempts, whether they're chip shots like he made the ultimate game winner or more from distance. And also, don't make any penalties because ASU was bailed out by the Shamari Simmons forced fumble that kind of negated that punt pinned at the 1 yard line. You can't give away those. It might be minor in the moment, but in the grand scheme, they can really hurt you there as well. You have a kicker that can consistently get the ball into the end zone for touchbacks and kind of negate the ground game as well. But maybe you spring a good return or two. But I think just in terms of you look at those two specialists and Canyon Floyd and Ian Hershey, they got to be perfect. Don't leave points on the board and be able to consistently flip the field if your offense gets stuffed.
Third and final one for me, keeping composure, keeping control under duress, and that includes penalties. You brought that up a moment ago, Brad, and there are only 3 teams in the country who average more penalties per game than Texas Tech, and it's kind of an interesting list. It's Washington, Michigan State, and San Diego State. So Texas Tech is tied for 129th nationally. They average 9.67 penalties committed per game. So if you can have a substantial margin of difference, or, again, if you can get those momentum plays and get the team frustrated. We saw that in the first 2 games with Wyoming and Mississippi State getting some chippy penalties. That's a big deal. You want to see ASU quiet the crowd as much as possible. As we mentioned, I'm sure this Texas Tech fan base is really aching for some consistency after, some shaky first few games. And if you can get a win here, if you're the Red Raiders and you get off to a 3-1 start, then, you've got a lot of potential for the year. This ball game is very, very important to both teams. So you want to see ASU be able to execute effectively because we saw little bits. Obviously, thankfully, it didn't, show itself in terms of the win-loss column. But if you think about that second half against Mississippi State or a good chunk of the first half against Texas State, when things would go south, it took a while for ASU really to rebound and get control back of the game. Obviously, in the second game of the season, the time just pretty much ran out. So you want to see that continuation of composure. You certainly don't want to see those scenarios like you saw in that third quarter against Mississippi State and that first and second quarter against Texas State where things just really go south. So again, keeping everything together, keeping momentum on your side, winning the penalty battle, huge deals.
All right, Joe, here we go. Time for predictions. I'll start things off. Final score, 34-31. I don't know who. I've been going back and forth. The score I'm locked in on, 34-31. I have no idea. I've been going back and forth. And as we record this Tuesday night, what I'm about to say in terms of who I think wins, I'm going to rest assured I will flip-flop on this 5, 6, 7, 8 times all the way through. Even up sitting in the press box there, I'm going to be flipping because I think this is a very even matchup from what we've seen. I think Texas Tech has kind of maybe found their groove a little bit, and they're going to maybe parlay the big performance against a lesser opponent to open up their Big 12 play. I really like what ASU was able to do in terms of overcoming adversity in back-to-back weeks, being able to counterpunch as we talked about, and on the road in a hostile atmosphere. Now things just get tougher now, but I think some of those issues that we saw a week ago were short week related, not having the full prep time, not having the ability to kind of recover physically from a SEC battle. But now they're coming in here with an extra couple of days of preparation. So I think that's going to really benefit the Sun Devils here. ultimately, I think they're going to stick to the script. You know, they're going to run the ball. I think they're going to be running the ball effectively. I think Sam Levitt, from the strides he's made, maybe we start to see, and I think they're going to need a couple of big shots, whether it is Jordan Tyson again, or maybe a guy like Jake Smith finally gets on track. Maybe we've seen Malik McClain, Troy O'Meara get in and do a little bit more as well down the field. But I think the passing game needs to step up. I think ASU's defense is going to probably get have some big plays, have a couple of turnovers as well. I do think they're going to probably give up a couple of big plays. And I think this is going to be a real nerve-wracking back and forth battle between two evenly matched teams. I mentioned 34-31 is going to be the final. As of right now, let's do it. ASU improves to 4-0.
So for me, I think that the way these first three games have gone should give ASU a sense of like humble confidence. You know that you can withstand pressure. You know that you can come back from being down. You know that you can take the adversity and end up on the better end of it. But I have that little, adjective of humble because this team can't be arrogant. They haven't been winning every single game 70-7. They've been punched in the mouth and they've punched back. But that offers, kind of an equal sense of pride in their resilience and also a sense of understanding that, okay, this team is not perfect and there are things to work on week after week. I think this is just going to be another one that's kind of weird where you might see teams like make some runs where maybe a team goes up by 10 or 14 and then that completely, evaporates and the other team gets a swing. I just see this again, maybe in somewhat similar nature to last week's game, just in terms of it being a wild, heart-pounding game that at the end of it, you just have to sit back and catch your breath and compose yourself. But, I think we're going to ride the hot hand. The curse ended last week, and the party doesn't end there. ASU walks out of Lubbock with a 38-35 victory.
30. Okay. Again, we're kind of close. So, yeah, field goal difference. I think that's the same thing as last week. So, hopefully we move to 4-0 in our predictions as well. And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our great panel of guests, Shamari Simmons, Clayton Smith, Keyshaun Elliott, and Joe Lopez. The game will be kicking off 2:30 p.m. Central Time for those making the trip out to Texas, 12:30 here in the Valley. TV on FS1. Make sure you stay with us on the social media side. Follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube. A lot of good content there. Joe, you had an awesome little YouTube short there to kind of documenting your arrival into your home state. I don't know. We can't discount that video didn't help break the curse.
Sometimes, it's like Major League, right? You get the bucket of chicken, you get the rum, you get everything. Anytime you're trying to get some evil spirits out of your life, you got to go all hands on deck. So that was a fun little thing to do. I'm glad it just didn't result in more criticism of a horrifying loss. Many, many reasons. Happy to get that little monkey off my back.
Also follow us on Facebook and give me a follow on social media at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. A huge shout out and thank you to all our awesome sponsors. Of course, we've mentioned many throughout the course of the show, and also included among those is the Spaghetti Shack, which you certainly know by now, not just owned and operated by Sun Devils, but also by a former Sparky the Sun Devil. The Spaghetti Shack is a community-focused to-go pasta concept started right here in Tempe, Arizona by 5 lifelong friends. They serve a menu starring spaghetti, meatballs, garlic bread, and a few other fan favorites. They make it their mission to provide quality, affordable food as quickly as possible so that you can spend less time cooking and spend more time with your loved ones. They offer a variety of Italian-American options for you to choose from, whether you want to pick one of their delicious options or build your own shack by choosing the amount of pasta, type of sauce, and protein. They have options for anybody and any family. And oh, by the way, part of the reason that the curse was deceased last weekend, I got to kick around at the ball game with our good buddy Joey Palomares in charge of the Spaghetti Shack. He was sitting right there in front of me. He travels to a lot of games, so he's seen some losses. We all had a nice little exhale of victory at the end of the ball game. Spaghetti Shack has 2 locations, one in Tempe at 6340 South Rural Road near the intersection of Rural and Guadalupe. They're open every day from 11 to 9. And for those up north, they have a Pine Top Lakeside location at 592 West White Mountain Boulevard, open daily from 11 to 8. You can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at The Spaghetti Shack, and on Twitter at Spaghetti_Shack.
And Joey was on my flight out to Texas as well. So, yeah, double dose of Joey means a big W for the Devils. Guess there. All right, so make sure what you support all our amazing sponsors and then drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. We'd greatly appreciate it. And even though ASU will be on a bye week next week, we won't be. We'll be back, break down the game, and take stock of the Devils at the, third of a season mark already.